I want to tell you a long story today. It is a story about one ordinary day that became very difficult. It is a story about small problems that became big problems. It is a story of fear, about shame, about tiredness, and about finding a quiet strength when everything falls apart. Many people think a bad day is just bad luck. They feel helpless. They feel broken. They think, why is this happening to me? But I learned something important. I learned that the problem is not always the day itself. The problem is how we see the day and how we talk to ourselves during the day. Let me start from the very beginning. When I was younger, I believed life should go according to plan. I made lists every night. I made schedules every morning. I woke up early. I prepared my clothes the night before. I charged my devices. I checked the weather. I thought if I planned carefully, nothing could go wrong. I felt safe inside that planning. I felt in control. I told myself, if I do everything right, the day will be smooth. For a long time, this belief worked. Most days were fine. Some days were even good. I started to trust the system completely. Then one morning, everything changed. It started like any other day. The sky was clear. Birds were singing outside my window. I had an important presentation at work. I had practiced for 2 full weeks. My slides were clean, my words were ready. I had even practiced in front of the mirror. I felt prepared. I felt confident. I went to sleep the night before with a calm mind. I set 2 alarms. I believed nothing could stop me. But the first problem came very early. My alarm did not ring. Both alarms stayed silent. I woke up late, very late. For a few seconds, I just lay there, confused. Then the panic started. My heart began to beat fast. I jumped out of bed. My feet touched the cold floor. I ran to the bathroom. I turned the shower on. The water was completely cold. There was no hot water that morning. I stood under the cold water for 1 minute. My body was shaking. I kept saying to myself, it's okay, just move fast. I dried myself quickly. I put on my best clothes. The shirt felt tight because I was rushing. I looked in the mirror. My face looked tired and worried. I tried to smile at myself. The smile looked fake. Then I started looking for my keys. I could not find them. I checked the usual places, the table near the door, the jacket pocket, the kitchen counter. Nothing. I checked under the bed. I checked inside my bag. I even checked the bathroom. Still nothing. Time was running away from me. Every minute felt expensive.
Finally, I found the keys. They were inside the refrigerator. I still do not know how they got there. Maybe I put them down while taking milk the night before. I grabbed the keys and ran out of the house. The morning air was cool. I ran to the bus stop. I saw the bus already moving. I waved my hand. The driver did not stop. I missed it. I stood there breathing hard. My chest felt tight. I waited for the next bus. When it came, it was crowded. People were standing close together. I had no seat. I held the metal bar and tried to calm my breathing. My mind was already full of worry about the presentation. When I reached the office building, I was sweaty and tired. My shirt was not perfect anymore. I walked into the meeting room. My boss looked at me. He did not smile. He just nodded. The meeting was about to start. I sat down and opened my laptop. The screen stayed black. The battery was completely dead. I had forgotten to charge it the night before. All my slides, all my notes, all my careful work locked inside a machine that would not turn on. I asked a colleague for a charger. He gave me one kindly. I plugged it in. The laptop started very slowly. Minutes passed. People were waiting. Some people checked their phones. Some people looked at me. My hands began to shake a little. I tried to speak without the slides. I opened my mouth. The words I had practiced for 2 weeks disappeared. My mind became blank, completely blank. I stood there in silence for a few seconds that felt like hours. Everyone was looking at me. I felt small. I felt stupid. I felt like a complete failure. After the meeting, my boss called me into his office. The room was quiet. He was not angry. He was calm and serious. He said, "Today was not your best day." Those words hurt more than shouting. I nodded. I could not find anything to say. He told me we would talk again later. I left his office with a heavy feeling in my chest. I went back to my desk. I sat down and stared at the wall for a long time. Later, I decided to go home early. On the way, the sky became dark. It started to rain. Hard rain. Heavy drops. I had no umbrella. Within 2 minutes, I was completely wet. My clothes stuck to my skin. Water ran down my face. I walked slowly through the rain. I did not even try to run. I just accepted the water. When I reached my apartment, I discovered the final problem. The power was out. No lights, no fan, no internet, no way to heat food. The rooms were dark and quiet and warm from the day's heat. I sat on the floor in the dark with wet clothes. My bag was still on my shoulder. I took it off and placed it beside me. For a long time, I just sat there. The silence was very loud. All the small problems of the day came back to my mind one by one. The silent alarm, the cold water, the missing keys, the missed bus, the dead laptop, the blank mind, the boss's quiet words, the rain, the darkness. I asked myself many questions. Why me? Why today? What did I do wrong? Is this a sign that I am not good enough?
After some time, I called my mother. My phone still had some battery. She answered quickly. Her voice was soft and familiar. She said, "Tell me what happened." I told her everything. I did not hide any part. I spoke slowly. Sometimes my voice shook. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a short silence. Then she said something I have never forgotten. She said, "A day when everything goes wrong is not the end. It is a teacher, but only if you are willing to learn from it." I did not understand at first. How could such a terrible day be a teacher? She explained carefully. She said, "Life is like a mirror. Sometimes it shows us what we do not want to see." That day showed me something important about myself. I had been living with too much need for control. I believed perfect planning meant perfect results. I believed I could prevent every problem if I tried hard enough. But life is not a machine. Life has its own rhythm. Sometimes the rhythm changes without warning, and when it changes, we have a choice. We can fight it and become more tired, or we can learn from it and become stronger. She told me a story from her own younger years. Many years ago, she also had a day when everything went wrong. She lost an important document. She missed a train. She arrived late for a job interview. She thought her chance was finished. She cried in a public bathroom. But that day forced her to slow down. It forced her to ask for help from a stranger. It forced her to see that she was not alone. After that day, she changed how she lived. She started leaving extra time. She started accepting that plans can change. She started trusting herself even when things looked bad. I listened carefully. Her words stayed with me long after the call ended. That night, still in the dark, I began to think differently. The dead laptop had shown me something. I had put all my confidence in technology and beautiful slides. I had forgotten that the most important tool is my own mind and my own voice. The missed bus had shown me that rushing creates more problems than it solves. The rain had shown me that some things are simply outside my control. The power cut had given me quiet time to think without distraction. I found a notebook and a pen. Even in the dark, I could write a little by the light of my phone. I wrote down every problem of the day. Then I wrote one sentence next to each problem. What is this trying to teach me? It felt strange at first, but slowly the page filled with small insights. I was not writing to fix the day. The day was already over. I was writing to understand myself better. The next morning, the power came back. Light filled the rooms again. I charged my laptop. I looked at my presentation with new eyes. I practiced speaking without the slides. I stood in my living room and spoke to the empty chairs. At first it felt uncomfortable. My voice was quiet. Then it became stronger. I imagined standing in front of real people with only my words and my presence. It still felt difficult, but it also felt possible.
At work, my boss gave me another chance a few days later. This time I was ready in a different way. I was calmer. I spoke more slowly. I looked at the people in the room instead of hiding behind the screen. I used the slides only as support, not as a shield. The presentation was not perfect. I still made small mistakes, but it was honest and clear. Afterward, my boss nodded and said, "Better." That one word meant a lot to me. That whole experience taught me several important lessons. I want to share them with you slowly. The first lesson is about control. We cannot control everything. Weather changes, machines break, people are late, plans fail, alarms stay silent. When we fight against this truth, we suffer more. When we accept it, we become stronger. Acceptance does not mean giving up. Acceptance means understanding the difference between what we can change and what we cannot change. I still make plans, but now I hold them lightly. The second lesson is about true preparation. Real preparation is not only about perfect slides or perfect schedules. Real preparation is about flexibility. It is about having a second plan. It is about training your mind to stay calm when the first plan collapses. After that day, I started small new habits. I leave home a little earlier. I keep important files in more than one place. I practice speaking without notes sometimes. I charge my devices every night without fail. These small actions give me more peace. The third lesson is about kindness to yourself. On that bad day, I was very hard on myself. In my mind, I called myself stupid. I called myself a failure. I told myself I always mess things up. Those words did not help me. They only made me weaker and more tired. After talking to my mother, I learned to speak to myself differently. I started saying, "This is hard, but I can handle it." I started saying, "One bad day does not define who I am." Kindness is not weakness. Kindness gives the brain space to solve problems instead of fighting itself. There is a fourth lesson I learned later. Bad days often teach us more than easy days. Easy days make us comfortable. Difficult days make us grow. Growth is rarely comfortable. Growth asks us to stretch. Growth asks us to look at our weaknesses without running away. Growth asks us to become slightly better versions of ourselves. That is why those hard days matter, even when they feel painful in the moment.
Let me share some practical ways to face such days. These are simple things I still use. First, when everything starts going wrong, pause. Do not rush from one problem to the next like a machine. Take 3 slow breaths. Feel your feet on the ground. Remind yourself that this moment will pass. Even 30 seconds of pausing can change the next decision. Second, write things down if you can. Writing helps the mind see clearly. It turns a big storm into smaller pieces. You do not need perfect sentences. Just write what is happening and how you feel. Third, choose one small action, only one. Fix the most important thing first, then move to the next. Trying to solve everything at the same time creates more panic. Fourth, talk to someone you trust. Isolation makes problems feel larger. Connection makes them feel smaller. It can be a parent, a friend, or even a kind colleague. You do not need them to fix everything. You only need them to listen. Fifth, at the end of the day, ask yourself 2 quiet questions. What did this day teach me? How can I use this lesson tomorrow? These questions turn pain into wisdom. They turn failure into something useful. Sixth, protect your sleep and your basic needs as much as possible. When the body is exhausted, the mind becomes darker. Even on a bad day, try to drink water, eat something simple, and rest when you can. I also want to tell you about the voice inside the head. On difficult days, that voice becomes very loud and very critical. It says things like, "You always fail," or "Everyone is better than you." I learned to notice that voice without believing every word. I learned to answer it gently. I am having a hard day. That is true, but I am still trying. That is also true. This small change in self-talk made a big difference over time. Months passed after that day. Of course, I have other difficult days. Life continues to bring surprises, but something had changed inside me. When problems came, I did not panic as quickly. I paused more often. I breathed. I looked for the next small step. Sometimes the next step was simply asking for help. Sometimes it was waiting quietly. Sometimes it was starting again from the beginning. Each time, the bad day became a little less frightening. I also noticed something interesting about memory. The easy days fade quickly. The difficult days stay with us longer. But if we meet them with curiosity instead of only fear, they become teachers instead of only wounds. I still remember that rainy evening in the dark apartment. At the time, it felt like one of the worst days of my life. Now I see it differently. It was the day everything went wrong, but it was also the day everything began to change inside me. It was the day I stopped believing I had to be perfect. It was the day I started trusting that I could survive imperfect days. It was the day I learned that strength is not the absence of problems. Strength is the ability to keep going when problems arrive, and to keep learning while going.
If you are living through a day when everything is going wrong right now, I want you to hear these words clearly. You are not alone. Your feelings are valid. The tiredness is real. The fear is real. The shame is real. But this day is not the whole story of your life. It is only one chapter. And even the darkest chapters can contain important lessons if we are willing to look for them. Be patient with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Take the next small step. That is enough for today. You do not need to fix your whole life before night comes. You only need to take care of this moment as kindly as you can. Looking back, I am almost grateful for that day. Not because it was pleasant. It was not pleasant at all. I am grateful because it woke me up. It showed me the limits of my old way of living. It pushed me toward a better way, a way with more flexibility, a way with more self-kindness, a way with more quiet trust in my ability to handle the unexpected. Life will continue to bring days when the alarm fails, the keys disappear, the laptop dies, and the rain falls without mercy. That is simply part of being human. The question is not how to avoid those days forever. The question is how to meet them, with panic or with presence, with harsh self-criticism or with steady self-compassion, with the belief that everything is ruined, or with the quiet knowledge that you can begin again. I choose the second path more often now, not perfectly, not every single time, but more often than before, and that small change has made a large difference in my life. The rushing river of problems still comes, but I no longer feel completely swept away. I have learned to stand a little more firmly. I have learned to look for the teaching inside the trouble. So this is my long story. The day everything went wrong became the day I began to understand what real strength means. It is not about never falling. It is about learning how to stand up again, a little wiser each time. It is about speaking to yourself with more kindness. It is about holding plans lightly. It is about remembering that one difficult day does not decide your whole future. If your own hard day is still fresh, hold on, breathe. Trust that this too can become part of your growth. The secret is not in avoiding the storm. The secret is in learning how to walk through it with open eyes and a steadier heart. Remember these simple things. Accept what you cannot control. Prepare for flexibility, not only for perfection. Speak to yourself with kindness. Pause when the panic rises. Take one small step at a time. Ask for help when you need it. Look for the lesson when the day is over. Do these things consistently. Be patient with the process, and one day you may look back at your own difficult day and realize something surprising. The day everything went wrong was also the day something important started to go right inside you. This is what I learned from that long, hard, rainy day and from the quiet conversation with my mother in the dark. I hope these words help you on your own journey. Your difficult days do not define you. How you respond to them,
how you speak to yourself during them, and what you learn from them, that is what shapes you. Trust yourself a little more. You are stronger and more capable than you sometimes believe, and even on the days when everything seems to fall apart, you still have the quiet power to begin again. One breath, one step, one kind word to yourself at a time. Thank you for listening to this long story. Take care of yourself. Be gentle with your own heart. And remember, even the hardest days can become teachers if we are willing to learn.
The day my mind became the loudest enemy. Slow English story. Self-talk and inner critic. I want to tell you a long and honest story today. It is a story about a bad day, but it is not only about the events that went wrong. It is mainly about the voice inside my head, the voice that became louder than the rain, louder than the silence, louder than everything else. Many people call this voice the inner critic. On difficult days, this voice can feel stronger than reality itself. I want to show you how that voice appears, how it speaks, and how I slowly learn to answer it with a softer voice. Let me start from the beginning. It was the same day I have told you about before, the day everything went wrong. The alarm did not ring, the water was cold, the keys were missing, I missed the bus, my laptop battery was dead, my mind went blank during the presentation, my boss spoke quietly, but the words hurt. Then the rain came and the power went out. I sat on the floor in the dark with wet clothes, but the real storm was not outside. The real storm was inside my mind. As soon as the first problem happened, a voice woke up. It was not a kind voice. It was sharp and fast and familiar. It said, "You are so careless. You always do this." When I could not find the keys, the voice said, "You are disorganized. Other people never lose things like this." When I missed the bus, it said, "You are always late. You never plan properly." When the laptop stayed black, the voice became louder. "You are unprofessional. You are going to fail in front of everyone." By the time I stood in the meeting room with a blank mind, the voice was screaming, "Everyone is looking at you. They think you are stupid. You are not good enough for this job. You will never improve." I could not hear my own thoughts clearly anymore. The negative voice filled every space. It felt like the truth. It felt like the only voice that existed. I want you to understand something important. This voice did not appear for the first time that day. It had been living inside me for many years. On normal days, it stayed quieter. It made small comments. "You should have done better. That was not perfect." But on a bad day, it grows. It becomes bigger and stronger and more confident. It uses every mistake as evidence. It collects small failures and turns them into a big story about who you are. That evening in the dark apartment, the voice continued. It repeated the whole day again and again. It showed me every mistake like a film. It said, "This is who you really are, a person who messes everything up, a person who cannot handle simple things."
I sat there and listened to it for a long time. I did not argue, I just believed it. My body felt heavy, my chest felt tight. I felt ashamed of myself. Then I called my mother. I told her what happened outside, but I also told her about the voice. I said, "My mind is attacking me. It will not stop." She listened carefully. After a short silence, she said, "That voice is not the real you. It is an old habit. It learned to speak loudly when you were young. Now you can learn to answer it." I did not fully understand at first. How can you answer a voice that feels so strong? She explained slowly. She said, the inner critic is like a frightened child who tries to protect you in the wrong way. It believes that if it criticizes you first, the world cannot hurt you more. It believes that harsh words will make you improve, but most of the time it only makes you smaller and more tired. That night, I decided to try something new. I took my notebook and wrote down the exact words the voice was saying. I wrote them without changing anything. You are careless. You are stupid. You always fail. You are not good enough. Seeing the words on paper made them clearer. They looked less like absolute truth and more like sentences. Then I did something that felt strange. I wrote a second column. In the second column, I tried to answer each sentence with a softer voice. Not a fake, positive voice, not a voice that said everything is wonderful, just a calmer, more honest voice. Next to "you are careless," I wrote, "I made mistakes today, that is true, but I am not only careless. I also prepare carefully most days." Next to "you are stupid," I wrote, "My mind went blank because I was tired and stressed. That happens to many people." It was difficult at first. The critical voice felt much stronger, but I kept writing. Slowly, the page filled with two different voices. One was sharp and absolute. The other was quieter and more balanced. Looking at both voices side by side helped me see the difference. The next morning, I noticed something. The critical voice was still there. It had not disappeared, but it was not the only voice anymore. There was a small space between the negative words and my belief in them. That small space was new. In that space, I could choose how to respond. I want to explain how the negative voice usually works on a bad day. First, something goes wrong. Second, the voice quickly gives a meaning to the event. It does not stay with the simple fact. It jumps to a big conclusion about your character. The laptop is dead becomes you are unprofessional. A blank mind becomes you are not intelligent. Missing a bus becomes you cannot manage life. The voice loves big, permanent labels. Third, the voice repeats the same message many times. Repetition makes it feel true. Fourth, the voice ignores every good thing you have done before. It only collects the mistakes. Fifth, the voice often uses words like always and never. You always mess up. You never do things right. These words make the situation feel endless and hopeless. Once I understood this pattern, I could catch the voice earlier. On later difficult days, I started noticing the moment when the voice jumped from a fact to a label. I would say quietly in my mind, "That is the critic speaking." Just naming it created a little distance. Then I practiced answering. I developed a simple way. When the harsh voice spoke, I asked 3 questions. First question, is this voice stating a fact or making a judgment? Second question, would I speak this way to a friend who had the same day? Third question,
What is a kinder and still honest way to see this? Let me give you real examples from my own mind. Harsh voice: you failed the presentation. You are not good enough for this job. Softer voice: the presentation was difficult because many things went wrong before it. I can learn from this and prepare differently next time. One presentation does not decide my whole value. Harsh voice: you are so disorganized. You lose everything. Softer voice: I lost my keys today. That was frustrating. I can make a better place for them. I am not a completely disorganized person. Harsh voice: everyone thinks you're stupid. Softer voice: I do not actually know what everyone thinks. I am assuming the worst. Some people might understand that bad days happen.
Practicing these answers felt unnatural for a long time. The soft voice seemed too gentle, almost weak. The critical voice felt more powerful and more real. But I kept practicing anyway. I practiced while walking. I practiced while writing. I practiced when I made small mistakes. Slowly, the soft voice became a little stronger. I also learned that the body and the inner critic are connected. When my body was tired, hungry, or full of stress, the negative voice became louder. When I slept better and drank water and took short walks, the voice became quieter. Taking care of the body made it easier to choose a kinder voice. Another important thing I discovered is this: the goal is not to destroy the inner critic completely. The critic sometimes notices real problems. Sometimes it points to something that needs attention. The goal is to stop letting it be the only voice and the final judge. The goal is to create balance, a voice that can see mistakes without destroying the whole person. Years later, I still hear the critical voice on hard days. It still tries to use the old words, but now I recognize it faster. I can say, I hear you. Thank you for trying to protect me, but I will choose a different way to speak to myself today. This does not make the pain disappear. The bad day still feels heavy, but the extra weight of self-attack becomes lighter. Let me share a practical method you can try. It is simple and does not need special tools. Step 1. Notice the voice. When you feel suddenly smaller or more ashamed, ask, what is my mind saying right now? Step 2. Write the exact words if possible, or say them out loud in a quiet place. Step 3. Ask, is this the only way to see the situation? Step 4. Write or speak a second version that is honest but kinder, not fake, just fairer. Step 5. Repeat this process many times. The soft voice grows with practice, the same way the critical voice grew with years of repetition. I want to tell you about one more moment. Several months after that dark, rainy day, I had another difficult afternoon at work. Something went wrong again. The critical voice started immediately. Here we go again, you never change. But this time I paused. I put my hand on my chest. I took one slow breath and I answered, this is hard. I feel disappointed, and I am still allowed to treat myself with respect while I figure out the next step. The voice did not disappear, but it lost some of its power. I was able to continue the day without drowning in shame. That small victory mattered a lot to me. It showed me that change is possible, even if it is slow. Many people believe that being hard on themselves is the only way to improve. They think kindness will make them lazy.
I used to believe this too, but I learned the opposite. When the inner critic is too strong, the mind becomes afraid. Fear makes learning harder. Kindness creates safety, and safety makes it easier to look at mistakes clearly and improve. Self-talk is not a small thing. The way we speak to ourselves becomes the atmosphere we live in. If the atmosphere is full of attack, every bad day feels heavier. If the atmosphere has some kindness, the same bad day becomes more bearable. We still feel the pain, but we do not add extra pain on top of it.
If you are listening to this, and your own inner critic is very loud right now, I want to speak directly to you. You are not weak for having this voice. Almost everyone has it. The voice often began many years ago as a way to survive, or to please others, or to avoid bigger pain. You did not choose it, but you can slowly choose how to respond to it. You can begin with very small steps. You do not need to change everything today. Just notice one harsh sentence, then try one softer sentence. That is enough for the beginning. Over weeks and months, the balance can shift. I am not free from the inner critic. I still meet it on difficult days. Sometimes it still surprises me with its old power. But I no longer believe it is the only truth. I no longer let it speak without any answer. That change has made my hard days less destructive. The day everything went wrong outside also became the day I started to change the weather inside my mind. The rain stopped, the power returned, the presentation was given a second chance. But the deeper change was quieter. It was the slow decision to stop attacking myself when life already felt heavy. You can make the same decision. Not perfectly, not all at once, just one softer sentence at a time, one moment of noticing, one moment of choosing a kinder voice. Remember this, the critical voice is loud, but it is not the only voice you have. There is also a quieter voice inside you, a voice that can see the full picture, a voice that knows you are a human being who makes mistakes and still deserves basic respect. That quieter voice can grow. It grows every time you choose it. On your next bad day, when the negative voice begins to speak, try to pause. Put a hand on your heart if it helps. Take one breath and ask yourself, how would I speak to a good friend who had this exact day? Then try to offer yourself a small piece of that same tone. This practice will not make bad days disappear. Life will still bring rain and dead batteries and blank minds. But the extra suffering that comes from self-attack can become lighter, and that lightness creates space. Space to think, space to learn, space to begin again. I will end with the same truth my mother gave me in the dark. The harsh voice is an old habit. Habits can change, not overnight, but they can change. You can learn to answer. You can learn to protect your own mind the same way you would protect someone you care about. Thank you for listening to this long story about the voice inside. Be patient with yourself while you practice. The soft voice becomes stronger with time and repetition, and every time you choose it, you take back a little more peace on the days when everything feels difficult. You are allowed to be imperfect. You are allowed to have bad days, and you are allowed to speak to yourself with some kindness while you walk through them. That is not weakness. That is a quiet and powerful form of strength. When I ran out of the house and missed the bus, the reactions became stronger. I stood at the bus stop and felt my heart pounding so hard that I could hear it in my ears. A dull, rhythmic sound. Thump, thump, thump. My mouth became dry. I tried to swallow and found it difficult. My stomach felt tight, as if someone had closed a fist inside it. I was not hungry, but I felt a strange emptiness mixed with nausea. On the crowded bus, the body continued its work. Standing close to strangers, holding the metal bar, I noticed my legs. They felt restless. A small shaking had moved from my hands into my thighs. I pressed my feet firmly into the floor to stop it. It helped only a little. My neck and shoulders had become hard. The muscles were tight, as if they were preparing to fight or to run. I tried to roll my shoulders. They resisted. They wanted to stay high and protected. By the time I entered the office, my body was already exhausted from its own reactions. My face felt hot. My palms were wet. I wiped them on my trousers before I shook anyone's hand. I was afraid people would notice the moisture. I was afraid they would notice the slight tremor when I held a pen. I sat down and opened the laptop. When the screen stayed black, a new wave moved through me. This wave was stronger. My heart jumped. It skipped into a faster rhythm. I felt heat rise into my neck and ears. My vision changed a little. The edges of the room seemed less clear. Sounds became sharper and more annoying. Someone coughing felt too loud. A chair moving felt too close. My body was increasing every signal because it believed the danger was growing. Then came the moment I still remember most clearly. I stood up to begin the presentation. I opened my mouth, and my mind went blank, completely blank. It was not that I forgot one word. It was as if someone had erased the whole page. There was nothing, no sentences, no structure, no memory of the practice I had done for 2 weeks, only empty white space inside my head. At the same time, the body reacted violently. My hands started shaking more visibly. I tried to hold them together in front of me. The shaking continued. Sweat ran down the side of my face. I could feel a drop moving near my ear. My heart was beating so hard that I wondered if people could see it through my shirt. My legs felt weak, as if the bones had become soft. I locked my knees to stay standing. My breathing was high and fast. I could not take a deep breath even when I tried. The blank mind and the shaking body fed each other. Because my mind was empty, the body became more afraid. Because the body was shaking and sweating, the mind found it harder to recover any words. I was trapped in a loop. The longer I stood in silence, the stronger the physical reactions became. Time felt strange. A few seconds felt like many minutes. After the meeting, I walked to the bathroom. I locked the door and looked in the mirror. The person looking back at me had a red face, shiny skin, and tired eyes. I turned on the cold water and put my wrists under it. I had read somewhere that cold water on the wrists can help. I stood there for a long time, watching the water run over my skin. Slowly, very slowly, the heart began to calm a little. The shaking in the hands reduced, but the tiredness remained.
The body had used a lot of energy. Later, when the rain fell and I walked home wet, the body was still speaking. My shoulders stayed high, my jaw was tight. I realized I had been pressing my teeth together for a long time. My stomach still felt closed, even after I reached the dark apartment and sat on the floor. The physical echoes continued. The heart was no longer racing, but it felt sensitive. Any small sound made it jump again. That night, I began to understand something important. The body does not wait for the mind to decide that there is danger. The body decides first. It has an old system, much older than our modern life. This system does not understand missed buses or dead laptops. It only understands threat. When it senses threat, it prepares the body to fight or to run or to freeze. Fast heart, sweating skin, shaking muscles, blank mind. These are not personal failures. They are ancient survival responses.
The fast heart is trying to send more blood to the muscles. The sweating is trying to cool the body for action. The shaking is the muscles preparing for movement or releasing tension. The blank mind is the brain focusing only on immediate survival and turning off complex thinking. None of these reactions mean you are weak. They mean your body is trying to protect you with the tools it has. But in modern life, these tools often become problems. We cannot run away from a presentation. We cannot fight a dead battery. So the energy stays inside the body with no place to go. The heart keeps racing. The hands keep shaking. The mind stays empty. And we begin to feel ashamed of our own physical reactions. The shame then creates more stress, and the circle continues. After that day, I started paying careful attention to my body. I learned to notice the first small signals, the slight increase in heart rate, the first moisture on the palms, the small tension in the shoulders, the moment when breathing moves up into the chest. When I could notice these signals early, I had more chance to respond before the full storm arrived. I also learned simple ways to speak back to the body, not with words only, but with actions. Slow breathing that comes from the stomach, feeling both feet firmly on the ground, placing cold water on the wrists or on the back of the neck, gently opening and closing the hands to release the shaking, softly dropping the shoulders, looking around the room and naming 5 things I can see. These actions tell the body that the danger is not as big as it believes. One of the most helpful things was learning that a blank mind is temporary. When the body is in high stress, the thinking part of the brain receives less energy. That is why words disappear. When the body begins to calm, the thinking part slowly returns. The knowledge is still there. It was never truly lost. It was only unreachable for a short time. Understanding this reduced my fear of the blank mind. I want to describe the physical feelings more carefully so you can recognize them in yourself. The racing heart feels like a drum inside the chest. Sometimes you can feel it in the neck or in the ears. It can make you feel short of breath even when you are breathing. The sweating of stress is different from normal heat sweat. It often appears suddenly on the palms, under the arms, on the upper lip, or on the back of the body. It can feel cold rather than warm. The shaking can start as a fine tremor in the fingers. It can move into the hands, the arms, or even the legs. Sometimes the voice also begins to shake because the muscles around the throat are tight.
The blank mind feels like a white wall. You reach for a word or a sentence and find nothing. It can create panic, which then makes the body react even more. Tight muscles often appear in the shoulders, the jaw, the neck, and the stomach. The stomach can feel like a hard ball or like an empty hole. All these reactions can happen together. They can also happen one after another. Sometimes the heart starts first. Sometimes the stomach closes first. Every person's body has its own pattern. Learning your personal pattern is useful. It allows you to notice the storm while it is still small. On later difficult days, I practiced staying with the body instead of fighting it. When my heart began to race, I would place one hand on my chest and say quietly, "I feel you. You are trying to protect me." When my hands shook, I would press them gently together or against my legs. When my mind went blank, I would focus on my feet on the floor and wait. Waiting was difficult, but it was better than adding more panic. I also learned that recovery takes time. After a strong stress reaction, the body does not return to normal in 1 minute. The heart may stay sensitive for hours. The muscles may stay tight. The mind may feel tired and foggy. This is normal. The body needs time to clear the stress chemicals and return to balance. Rest, water, gentle movement, and quiet help this process.
There is one more important truth. Many people feel ashamed of their body's stress reactions. They think, "I should be stronger, I should control this." But the body does not respond to shame. Shame usually makes the reactions stronger. What the body responds to is safety, signals of safety, slow breathing, kind attention, soft physical contact, permission to feel what is happening without judgment. If you are someone whose body reacts strongly to stress, I want you to hear this clearly. Your body is not broken. Your body is sensitive and protective. The same system that makes your heart race and your hands shake is the system that has kept human beings alive for thousands of years. It is powerful. The work is not to destroy this system. The work is to help it understand when the danger is real and when the danger is only a difficult meeting or a missed bus. You can begin to build a different relationship with your body. When the heart races, you can thank it for trying to help. When the hands shake, you can give them something steady to hold. When the mind goes blank, you can wait with patience instead of panic. These small changes slowly teach the body that it is safe enough to calm down. The day everything went wrong outside was also the day my body spoke with full volume. At the time, I hated every physical reaction. I wanted them to stop immediately. Now I see them differently. They were messages, loud, uncomfortable, but honest messages. They told me that I was overwhelmed. They told me that I needed care, not more criticism. Today, when I feel the first signs, the faster heart, the warm face, the restless hands, I try to listen earlier. I try to respond earlier. Sometimes I still get caught in the full storm. The blank mind still visits me on hard days. But I no longer believe that these reactions make me weak. I understand they are part of being human. If your body is reacting strongly right now while you listen to this, pause for a moment. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice your breath without trying to change it. Place a hand on your chest or on your stomach if it feels comfortable. You do not need to fix anything in this second. You only need to stay present with what is happening. The body keeps the score of our stress. It remembers, but it can also learn new patterns. Every time you meet a stress reaction with a little more understanding and a little less shame, you teach the body something new. You teach it that it is possible to feel strong sensations and still be safe. This is the long story of the day my body took over. The racing heart, the sweating skin, the shaking hands, and the blank mind were not my enemies. They were messengers. Learning to hear them, to respect them, and to gently guide them has been one of the most important skills of my life. You can learn the same skill. Start by noticing, then add a little kindness, then add one small action that signals safety. Repeat this many times. The body is always listening, and over time it can learn a calmer language. Thank you for listening to this long and detailed story. Be patient with your own body. It is doing its best with the information it has, and you can slowly give it better information that says we can face difficult moments without turning every one of them into a fight for survival. Your heart, your hands, your skin, and your mind are all part of you. They deserve understanding, even on the days when they react too strongly, especially on those days. The day I finally asked for help, a slow English story about shame, asking, and the lightness that follows. I want to tell you a long and honest story today. It is a story about asking for help. It is about the heavy feeling of shame that often comes before the words. It is about the fear of looking weak, and it is about the surprising lightness that can arrive after the words are spoken. Many people believe that strong people never need help. I used to believe that too. On one very difficult day, I learned that the opposite can be true. Asking for help did not make me smaller, it made the day more bearable. Let me tell you everything slowly and carefully. It was the same day I have spoken about before, the day the alarm failed, the day the water was cold, the day the keys were lost, the day the bus left behind me, the day the laptop stayed black, the day my mind went blank in front of people, the day the rain soaked my clothes, the day the power went out. By the time I sat on the floor in the dark apartment, I was carrying more than wet clothes and a failed presentation. I was carrying a deep belief that I had to handle everything alone. The belief was old. It had lived inside me for many years. It said, if you ask for help, people will think you are weak. If you ask for help, you are failing. If you ask for help, you become a burden. These sentences felt like truth. They felt like rules I must never break. So even when my hands were still shaking and my chest felt tight, I did not reach for the phone immediately. I sat in the dark and tried to solve the day by myself. The shame began quietly. First, it appeared as a simple thought. I should be able to fix this. Then it grew. Other people would handle this better. Then it became sharper. If I call someone, they will see how badly I managed everything. The shame made my body heavier. My shoulders dropped forward. My head lowered. I felt smaller inside the dark room. I thought about calling my mother. The idea brought immediate resistance. A voice inside said, "She has her own life. Do not disturb her with your problems. You are an adult. Adults solve things alone." Another voice said, "If you tell her everything, she will worry. You will make her sad. That is selfish. These voices felt protective, they felt responsible, but they also kept me alone with the weight. I stayed in that resistance for a long time. I looked at my phone, I put it down, I picked it up again. I imagined the conversation and felt heat in my face, even though no one could see me. The shame was not only about the failed presentation, it was about needing another person. It was about admitting that my own strength was not enough for this day. Many people know this feeling, the moment when help is available, yet something inside refuses to reach for it. The refusal often wears the mask of independence. It says, "I am strong, I can do this." But underneath the mask there is often fear. Fear of judgment, fear of being seen as less capable, fear of owing someone something, fear of hearing "I told you so," or simply fear of being vulnerable. That night, the resistance finally became more painful than the idea of calling. My chest felt tight, my thoughts were going in circles. I was exhausted from carrying the day alone. So I picked up the phone and dialed my mother's number. My heart beat faster while the phone rang. A part of me still wanted to cancel the call, but I stayed on the line. When she answered, her voice was calm and familiar. She said, "Hello?" For a second, I could not speak. The shame sat in my throat. Then I said the first difficult sentence. Today was very hard. My voice was quieter than usual. She did not interrupt. She simply said, "Tell me." I began to tell her. I started with the alarm, then the cold water, then the keys, then the bus, then the laptop, then the blank mind, then the boss's quiet words, then the rain, then the dark apartment. As I spoke, something unexpected happened. Each sentence took a little weight off my chest. The story that felt unbearable when it lived only inside me became slightly lighter when it was shared. She listened without trying to fix everything immediately. She did not say, "You should have charged the laptop." She did not say, "You should have left earlier." She simply stayed present. When I finished, there was a short silence. Then she said, "That sounds like a very heavy day. I'm glad you called."
The fast heart is trying to send more blood to the muscles. The sweating is trying to cool the body for action. The shaking is the muscles preparing for movement or releasing tension. The blank mind is the brain focusing only on immediate survival and turning off complex thinking. None of these reactions mean you are weak. They mean your body is trying to protect you with the tools it has. But in modern life, these tools often become problems. We cannot run away from a presentation. We cannot fight a dead battery. So the energy stays inside the body with no place to go. The heart keeps racing, the hands keep shaking, the mind stays empty, and we begin to feel ashamed of our own physical reactions. The shame then creates more stress, and the circle continues. After that day, I started paying careful attention to my body. I learned to notice the first small signals, the slight increase in heart rate, the first moisture on the palms, the small tension in the shoulders, the moment when breathing moves up into the chest. When I could notice these signals early, I had more chance to respond before the full storm arrived. I also learned simple ways to speak back to the body, not with words only, but with actions. Slow breathing that comes from the stomach, feeling both feet firmly on the ground, placing cold water on the wrists or on the back of the neck, gently opening and closing the hands to release the shaking, softly dropping the shoulders. looking around the room and naming 5 things I can see. These actions tell the body that the danger is not as big as it believes. One of the most helpful things was learning that a blank mind is temporary. When the body is in high stress, the thinking part of the brain receives less energy. That is why words disappear. When the body begins to calm, the thinking part slowly returns. The knowledge is still there. It was never truly lost. It was only unreachable for a short time. Understanding this reduced my fear of the blank mind. I want to describe the physical feelings more carefully so you can recognize them in yourself. The racing heart feels like a drum inside the chest. Sometimes you can feel it in the neck or in the ears. It can make you feel short of breath even when you are breathing. The sweating of stress is different from normal heat sweat. It often appears suddenly on the palms, under the arms, on the upper lip, or on the back of the body. It can feel cold rather than warm. The shaking can start as a fine tremor in the fingers. It can move into the hands, the arms, or even the legs. Sometimes the voice also begins to shake because the muscles around the throat are tight. The blank mind feels like a white wall. You reach for a word or a sentence and find nothing. It can create panic, which then makes the body react even more. Tight muscles often appear in the shoulders, the jaw, the neck, and the stomach. The stomach can feel like a hard ball or like an empty hole. All these reactions can happen together. They can also happen one after another. Sometimes the heart starts first. Sometimes the stomach closes first. Every person's body has its own pattern. Learning your personal pattern is useful. It allows you to notice the storm while it is still small. On later difficult days, I practiced staying with the body instead of fighting it. When my heart began to race, I would place one hand on my chest and say quietly, "I feel you. You are trying to protect me." When my hands shook, I would press them gently together or against my legs. When my mind went blank, I would focus on my feet on the floor and wait. Waiting was difficult, but it was better than adding more panic. I also learned that recovery takes time. After a strong stress reaction, the body does not return to normal in 1 minute. The heart may stay sensitive for hours. The muscles may stay tight. The mind may feel tired and foggy. This is normal. The body needs time to clear the stress chemicals and return to balance. Rest, water, gentle movement, and quiet help this process.
The day I believed everyone else was better. Slow English story, comparison, and the feeling that everyone else handles it better. I want to tell you a long and honest story today. It is a story about comparison. It is about the quiet, painful belief that other people handle life better than we do. It is about the sentence that appears on difficult days. Everyone else would manage this more calmly. Everyone else is stronger, more organized, more capable than I am. This feeling can make a hard day much heavier. I know it well. On one very difficult day, this feeling took over my mind. Let me tell you how it happened and what I slowly learnt. It was the same day I have spoken about before. The alarm did not ring. The water was cold. The keys were lost. The bus left behind me. The laptop battery was dead. My mind went blank during the presentation. The rain soaked my clothes. The power went out. By the time I sat in the dark apartment, another pain had joined the others. It was the pain of comparison. The comparison began early. When I woke up late, the first thought was not only, "I am late." The next thought came quickly. Other people wake up on time. Other people set backup alarms. Other people are more responsible. When I could not find the keys, the voice continued, "Normal people do not lose their keys. Normal people have a place for everything." When I missed the bus, the voice said, "Other people leave earlier. Other people plan better. Other people never look so rushed and messy." By the time I reached the office with a dead laptop, the comparison had become a full story. In my mind, I saw imaginary colleagues who always charged their devices. I saw imaginary people who spoke confidently, even without slides. I saw a version of myself that did not exist, a calm, prepared, never-failing person. And then I measured the real me against that image and found myself lacking. During the presentation, when my mind went blank and my hands shook, the comparison became cruel. I imagined the people in the room thinking, "We would never freeze like this." I imagined them handling the same situation with ease. I imagined them walking out of the room still confident and respected. The more I compared, the smaller I felt. The smaller I felt, the harder it became to recover any words. After the meeting, the comparison continued in the hallway and in the bathroom. I looked at other people working at their desks. From the outside, they looked calm and efficient. My mind immediately decided, they never have days like mine. They handle pressure better. They are simply better at life. I had no real evidence for these thoughts. I was creating a story from appearances, but the story felt true. When the rain fell and I walked home wet, the comparison followed me. I imagined other people who always carry umbrellas. I imagined other people who check the weather. I imagined other people who never look so defeated at the end of a day. By the time I reached the dark apartment, the belief was fully formed. Everyone else handles life better than I do. I am the only one who falls apart like this. This belief is heavy. It does two painful things at the same time. First, it isolates us. If everyone else is better, then no one else can understand our struggle. Second, it adds shame on top of the original difficulty. The missed bus is painful. The belief that only I miss buses is more painful. The blank mind is frightening. The belief that no one else freezes like this is more frightening. I sat in the dark and let the comparison run. I thought of friends who seemed to manage work and home smoothly. I thought of colleagues who spoke with confidence. I thought of people on the internet who shared only their successful moments. All of these images became proof that I was behind, less capable, less mature. The day had been difficult. The comparison made it feel like a personal failure of character. When I finally called my mother, I told her about the events. Then I also told her about the comparison. I said, "I keep thinking everyone else would have handled this better." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that stayed with me. She said, "You are comparing your full messy day with other people's highlight moments. That is not a fair comparison. You never see the full story of another person's hard days."
Her words did not erase the feeling immediately, but they created a small crack in the belief. I began to wonder, do other people really never lose keys? Do other people never freeze under pressure? Do other people never walk home wet and tired and ashamed? The honest answer, I slowly realized, is no. Other people have their own difficult days. They simply do not always show them. I thought about the people I had compared myself to. The calm colleague at work. I did not know what happened in his evenings. The confident friend. I did not know about her private struggles. The people online. I only saw what they chose to present. I was measuring my behind-the-scenes reality against other people's carefully selected surfaces. That kind of measurement can only produce pain. In the days that followed, I started watching the comparison habit more carefully. I noticed when it appeared. It often appeared at the exact moment I was already feeling low. A small mistake would happen, and immediately the mind would say, "See, other people do not make this mistake." The comparison was not neutral, it was a weapon the critical voice used to make me feel smaller. I also noticed that comparison steals the present moment. Instead of simply dealing with the dead laptop or the blank mind, I was living in an imaginary classroom where everyone else received better grades than I did. My energy went into ranking myself against others instead of taking the next small step in my own situation. One of the most painful parts of the "everyone handles it better" feeling is that it feels so convincing. It does not feel like a story, it feels like a fact. On that dark evening, it felt completely true that I was uniquely bad at handling life. Only later, with distance, could I see that it was a feeling, not a fact, a very common feeling. Many people carry this same quiet belief: capable people, responsible people, people who look strong from the outside. Inside, on hard days, the same sentence appears: everyone else would do this better. The belief is widespread, yet because we rarely speak about it, each person thinks they are the only one who feels this way. The isolation grows. I began to practice a different response when the comparison appeared. First, I tried to notice the exact sentence: everyone else handles this better. Naming it helped. Second, I asked a simple question: do I have real evidence for this, or am I guessing? Most of the time, I was guessing. Third, I tried to bring the focus back to my own next step. What is one small thing I can do now? This did not make the comparison disappear, but it reduced its power. I also started collecting small pieces of evidence against the belief. I remembered times when friends had called me in distress. I remembered colleagues who had admitted mistakes. I remembered moments when people I admired had looked tired or uncertain. These memories did not make my hard day easier, but they made the story of everyone else is better less absolute. Another helpful practice was to turn the comparison around with kindness. Instead of "they are better than me," I sometimes tried "they are human like me. They also have days they do not show." This was not about pretending everyone struggles equally. It was about refusing to turn other people's unknown lives into weapons against myself. The feeling of comparison is often connected to an invisible scoreboard. On this scoreboard, we give ourselves points for calmness, organization, success, and emotional control. Then we imagine other people scoring higher. The scoreboard is imaginary, yet it can create real suffering. Putting down the scoreboard, even for a few minutes, creates relief.
On that difficult day, the comparison made me feel alone with my failure. After I spoke with my mother and later reflected more carefully,
I began to see that the loneliness was partly created by the comparison itself. When I believed everyone else was better, I could not imagine that anyone would understand. When I softened the belief, connection became possible again. I want to speak directly to the part of you that feels this way. If you are in a hard moment and the thought, everyone else handles life better than I do, is present, please know that this thought is common. It is not proof that you are behind. It is a habit of mind that appears under stress. The habit can be noticed, it can be questioned, it can slowly lose some of its authority. You do not have to force yourself to believe you are better than others. That is just another form of comparison. The more useful direction is to step off the ranking system entirely, at least for a while. Your value does not increase or decrease based on how calmly you handle a dead laptop or a blank mind. Your value remains while you learn, while you struggle, and while you begin again. The day everything went wrong outside was also the day the comparison voice spoke at full volume. It told me I was uniquely bad at life. It used every mistake as evidence. It ignored every previous day when I had managed well. That is how the comparison voice works. It is selective. It collects failures and erases successes. Seeing this pattern helped me trust it less. Over time, I developed a simple sentence I could use when the feeling appeared. I am having a hard day. Other people have hard days too. I do not need to rank myself right now. The sentence did not magically remove the pain, but it created a little space between me and the belief. In that space, I could breathe and choose the next small action. Comparison often looks backward or sideways. It looks at other people's imagined competence. It rarely looks forward with kindness. When I caught myself comparing, I sometimes asked, what would be a kind next step for me, regardless of what others might do? This question brought me back to my own life, my own pace, my own needs. If you practice noticing the comparison habit, you may discover that it appears most strongly when you are already tired, ashamed, or overwhelmed. It is not an independent judge, it is a reaction. Treating it as a reaction rather than as the truth can reduce its power. The lightness that comes from releasing comparison is quiet. It does not arrive as a big victory. It arrives as a small softening. The shoulders drop a little, the breath deepens a little. The day remains difficult, but it is no longer difficult and also proof that you are less than everyone else. That second layer of pain can lift. I still feel the comparison impulse on hard days. The old sentence still tries to form. Everyone else would handle this better. But now I recognize it faster. I can say, there is the comparison voice again. Recognition creates choice, and choice, even small choice, is a form of freedom. You are allowed to have messy days. You are allowed to freeze, to lose keys, to feel overwhelmed. These experiences do not place you below the rest of humanity. They place you inside humanity. The people you imagine as perfectly calm also have moments they do not advertise. You are not alone in the struggle, even when the comparison voice insists that you are. Thank you for listening to this long story about the feeling that everyone else handles life better. The feeling is heavy and convincing, but it is not the final truth. You can notice it. you can question it, and you can gently return your attention to your own next step. And in that return, a quieter kind of strength becomes possible. Your hard days do not need to become proof that you are behind. They can simply be hard days, and hard days are something every human being meets, whether they show them or not. You are not less for struggling, you are human for struggling, and that is enough.
The small wins after everything went wrong. Slow English story. Tiny positive moments after a big failure. I want to tell you a very long and careful story today. It is a story about what happens after a big failure. It is not only about the hard day itself, it is about the next day, and the day after that, and the quiet week that follows. It is about the small wins that appear when we are still tired and still ashamed. Many people think that after a big failure, we need a big success to feel better. I used to think that too, but I learned something gentler and more true. Sometimes the first healing does not come from a big victory. It comes from very small positive moments, moments so small that we almost miss them. Let me tell you about those moments slowly. You already know the hard day, the alarm that stayed silent, the cold water, the lost keys, the missed bus, the dead laptop, the blank mind in front of people, the quiet words from my boss, the heavy rain, the dark apartment with no power. That day ended with a phone call to my mother and a little bit of lightness, but the failure still sat in my body. When I finally fell asleep, it was a restless sleep. I woke several times. Each time the presentation returned to my mind. Each time the blank mind returned. Each time the comparison voice whispered again. The next morning the power was back. Light filled the rooms. For a few seconds before my mind fully awoke, the day felt neutral. Then memory arrived. The failure arrived with it. My first clear thought was, yesterday was bad. Today will probably be heavy too. My body still felt tired. My shoulders were still tight. My stomach felt a little closed. I did not want to get out of bed. This is often how the day after a big failure begins, not with drama, with heaviness and the wish to stay hidden. I made myself get up. I walked to the bathroom. The water was warm this time. That was the first small thing. Warm water on my skin. I stood under it longer than usual. I noticed the temperature. I noticed that my breathing slowed a little while the water ran over my shoulders. It was not a solution. It was not a victory. It was simply warm water. But after the cold shower of the previous day, it felt like a quiet kindness from the world. I later wrote in my notebook, warm water. I noticed it. I made tea. My hands were still a little unsteady from the leftover stress. I spilled a few drops on the counter. The old critical voice tried to speak. You can't even pour tea properly. But this time I answered more quickly. It is only a few drops. I can wipe them. I wiped the counter. The small action of cleaning the spill gave me a tiny sense of order. Another small win. I cleaned something that was within my control. I sat with the tea and looked out the window. The sky was ordinary, not beautiful, not dramatic, just ordinary light. I drank the tea slowly. For a few minutes I did not think about the failure. I only tasted the tea and watched a bird on the railing. When my mind returned to the failure, I noticed that those few minutes of quiet had existed. They were real.
I named them in my mind. A few minutes without the heavy story. That was the next small win. Going to work felt difficult. Part of me wanted to stay home. Another part knew that hiding would make the shame grow. I chose to go. On the way, I did not miss the bus. I arrived with time to spare. This simple fact, arriving on time, felt larger than it should. After the chaos of the previous morning, ordinary punctuality felt like a small repair. I walked into the building with my heart beating faster than usual, but I walked in. At my desk, I charged the laptop immediately. I watched the battery percentage rise. 10%, 20%, 30%. It was a very ordinary process, yet I felt a quiet relief watching the numbers go up. The machine that had failed me the day before was slowly becoming useful again. I wrote in a small note on my phone, "Laptop is charging. I started it early." Another small win.
My boss walked past my desk mid-morning. He did not stop to talk about the presentation. He simply nodded. The nod was neutral. It was not praise. It was not criticism. But in my nervous system, it registered as safety. He had not called me into his office again. He had not looked at me with disappointment. The absence of further punishment was a small win. I breathed a little deeper after he passed. Later that morning, a colleague asked me a simple work question. I answered clearly. My mind did not go blank. My voice did not shake. The interaction lasted less than 2 minutes. It was completely ordinary. Yet after the blank mind of the previous day, ordinary competence felt meaningful. I noticed it. I answered a question. My mind stayed with me. That noticing was itself a small win. At lunch, I ate slowly. The food tasted normal. I was able to finish the meal. The day before, my stomach had been too tight for proper food. Today, it accepted nourishment. I sat with that fact for a moment. My body is accepting food again. Another quiet, positive moment. In the afternoon, I opened the presentation file. I did not try to fix everything at once. I only looked at the first 3 slides. I changed one sentence that had always felt unclear. The change took 4 minutes. When I finished, I sat back and looked at the cleaner sentence. It was a tiny improvement, but it was movement. After a day of complete collapse, movement in the right direction mattered. I wrote, "I improved one sentence. The file is no longer frozen in failure." Near the end of the workday, I received a short message from a friend. She asked how I was. I answered honestly but briefly. Yesterday was hard. Today is a little better. She replied with a simple sentence. "I'm glad today is lighter." Reading those words created a small warmth in my chest. Connection had reached me without me having to ask for it first. That was a small win I had not expected. I left work on time. On the way home, the sky was clear, no rain. I walked part of the way instead of taking the bus the whole distance. My legs felt tired but usable. I noticed the air on my face. I noticed that I was not rushing. After the previous day's frantic running and wet clothes, a calm walk under a clear sky felt like a gift. I named it, a walk without panic. At home, I charged every device I owned. Phone, laptop, earphones. I lined them up near the sockets.
The sight of the charging lights, small red and green dots, gave me a sense of preparation. I was not going to repeat the dead battery problem the next day. This simple act of prevention was a small win. It told my nervous system, we are learning. I cooked a simple meal, nothing special, rice and vegetables. While I cooked, I played soft music. The music filled the quiet apartment. For a while, the failure story stayed in the background. When it returned, I let it return, but I also returned to the sound of the music and the smell of the food. Holding both realities at once, the memory of failure and the present moment of cooking, was a quiet skill I was practicing. The meal itself, when I ate it, tasted like ordinary care. In the evening, I opened my notebook. I did not write a long analysis. I only made a list of the small things that had gone okay that day. Warm shower, tea without major spilling, a few minutes of quiet at the window, arriving on time, laptop charging, neutral nod from the boss, answering a colleague's question, eating a full lunch, improving one sentence, message from a friend, clear sky walk, charging all devices, cooking a meal. Looking at the list surprised me. The day had not been dramatic. It had not erased yesterday, but it contained many small points of light. I titled the page, Small Wins on the Day After.
I slept better that night. Not perfectly, but better. When I woke up the next morning, the heaviness was still present, yet it was not quite as thick. This slight reduction in heaviness was itself a small win. Recovery is often measured in these thin differences. The rest of the week unfolded in a similar quiet way. I want to tell you about several more small wins that appeared across the next days. None of them were dramatic, all of them mattered. On the third day, I had a short conversation with a colleague who had lent me the charger on the hard day. I thanked him again. He smiled and said, "No problem at all." The exchange lasted 20 seconds, yet saying thank you out loud and receiving a kind response closed a small open loop in my mind. Gratitude expressed became a small win. On the fourth day, I practiced the presentation alone in an empty meeting room. I spoke for 7 minutes without slides. My mind stayed with me the whole time. When I finished, I stood quietly and noticed that the blank mind had not returned. The success was small and private. No one else saw it, but I saw it. I felt a quiet pride that did not need an audience. I spoke for 7 minutes. The words stayed. That was a real win. On the fifth day, my boss sent a short email about a different project. The email was normal and work-related. It contained no mention of the failed presentation. The silence on that topic felt like permission to continue. I was not frozen in the previous mistake. Work was moving forward. That forward movement, even in email form, was a small win. On the sixth day, I met a friend for a short walk. I told her a brief version of the hard day. She listened and then shared a failure of her own from years earlier. Hearing her story reduced the feeling that I was uniquely bad at handling life. Connection through shared imperfection became another small win. We laughed once about how dramatic our minds can become during stress. The laughter was light and real. On the seventh day, I reviewed the presentation one more time and made 3 small improvements. Then I closed the file and did not open it again that evening. Knowing when to stop working on the wound was a form of care. Leaving the file closed felt like a boundary. That boundary was a small win. I want to speak carefully about why these small wins matter so much after a big failure. A big failure often creates a story in the mind. The story says, I am broken, I cannot manage, nothing will be okay. This story feels total. Small wins do not destroy the story in one moment, but they begin to contradict it. Each small win is a piece of evidence that the total story is not completely accurate. The warm shower says care is still possible. The answered question at work says competence is still present. The 7-minute practice says the blank mind was temporary. Over time, these pieces of evidence gather. The total story of failure begins to lose some of its power. Small wins also help the body. After strong stress, the nervous system stays sensitive. Big successes can feel too far away to calm the body. Small wins are close enough to register. The body notices the warm water. The body notices the deeper breath after the boss's neutral nod. The body notices the absence of shaking during the 7-minute practice. These physical registrations of safety help the system settle.
There is another important reason small wins matter. They rebuild agency. A big failure can leave us feeling powerless. We begin to believe that events control us completely. When we create or notice a small win, we experience a tiny moment of influence. I chose to charge the laptop early. I chose to improve one sentence. I chose to walk part of the way home. These choices are small, yet they remind the mind that we still have some ability to act. I learned to look for small wins deliberately. Each evening during that week, I asked myself 3 questions. What is one thing that went okay today? What is one moment when my mind or body felt a little more settled? What is one small action I took that was kind or useful? Writing the answers trained my attention. Attention is limited. If it only looks for failure, it will find failure. If it also looks for small wins, it will begin to find those too. Some small wins were almost invisible to other people. The moment I noticed my breathing had slowed, the moment I chose not to speak harshly to myself after a minor mistake, the moment I felt a few minutes of genuine interest in a work task again. These inner wins were easy to dismiss, yet they were part of the healing. Inner shifts often come before outer results. I want to tell you about one particular small win that surprised me. 5 days after the failure, I was standing in the kitchen making tea again. Suddenly, I realized I had not thought about the presentation for almost an hour. The failure had not disappeared, but it had stopped occupying the entire mind. The ability to forget the story for a while was a sign of recovery. I stood quietly with the tea and let the realization settle. I forgot about it for a while. That means it is not the only thing in my life. Another small win came in the form of physical energy. On the hard day and the day after, my body had felt heavy and slow. By the middle of the week, I noticed that I could climb the stairs at work without the same heaviness. My legs felt more willing. Sleep had improved a little. Appetite had returned fully. These physical recoveries were quiet and gradual. I decided to count them as wins. The body was coming back. I also experienced a small win in self-talk. One afternoon, I made a minor error in an email. The critical voice immediately said, "You see, you always make mistakes." This time, I responded differently. I said, "It is a small error, I can correct it. One error does not equal the hard day." The correction of the email took 30 seconds. The correction of the self-talk took a little longer, but it happened. Choosing a fairer sentence was a win. By the end of the week, I had a second chance to speak about the project in a smaller meeting. I used slides this time, but I also spoke without reading every word. My hands were mostly steady, my mind stayed present. When I finished, my boss said, "Clearer." One word, but it was enough. The word landed in my body as relief and quiet satisfaction. This was a larger small win. It was built on all the tiny ones that had come before. I walked home that evening with a different feeling. The failure of the previous week was still part of my history. It had not been erased, but it was no longer the only story. A new story was beginning to form. The new story included the hard day and also the warm shower the next morning, the charged laptop, the 7-minute practice, the friend's message, the clear sky walk, the list of small wins, the moment I forgot about the failure for an hour, the improved energy in my legs, the fairer self-talk, and the word clearer. Both stories were true. Holding both made me more complete.
I want to speak to you directly if you are in the days after a big failure. The hard day may still feel large in your body and mind. You may be waiting for a big success to prove that you are okay again. Big successes are wonderful when they come, but you do not have to wait for them to begin healing. You can begin with the smallest positive moments that are already available. Look for the warm water. Look for the full breath. Look for the task you completed even though you felt tired. Look for the moment the critical voice spoke and you answered a little more kindly. Look for the person who treated you with ordinary neutrality or ordinary kindness. Look for the food you were able to enjoy. Look for the few minutes when the failure story became quiet. These moments are easy to dismiss because they are not dramatic. Do not dismiss them. They are the beginning of the return. You can help the process by writing the small wins down. The act of writing makes them more solid. It tells the mind these things also happened. They count. A list of small wins after a big failure is not a denial of the failure. It is a more complete record of reality. Recovery is rarely a straight line. Some days after the hard day will still feel heavy. Some mornings the shame will return with force. On those days, the small wins may feel smaller. That is okay. You can still notice the one thing that went okay. Even one thing is enough to keep the door open. Over time, the small wins accumulate. They create a quiet foundation. From that foundation, larger steps become possible. The 7-minute private practice made the later meeting easier. The early charging of the laptop reduced one source of anxiety. The kind self-talk made the next mistake less destructive. Nothing large happens without many small supports underneath it. The day everything went wrong was a big failure in my experience. The week that followed did not contain a dramatic redemption. It contained warm water, charged batteries, ordinary conversations, one improved sentence, a clear sky walk, a list in a notebook, a 7-minute practice, a friend's message, better sleep, returned appetite, fairer self-talk, and the word clearer. These were my small wins. They were enough to begin the repair. If you collect your own small wins in the days after a failure, you will be doing important work. You will be teaching your mind and body that the failure was one chapter, not the whole book. You will be rebuilding trust in yourself, one ordinary moment at a time. You will be creating evidence that you can keep going. I still keep a notebook practice. On difficult weeks, I return to the simple question, what were the small wins today? The answers are rarely impressive to anyone else. They are impressive to my nervous system. They tell it that safety and competence and care are still available even after hard days. You can begin this practice whenever you need it. You do not have to wait until you feel strong. You can begin while you still feel weak. The small wins do not require strength. They only require a little attention and a little honesty. The big failure will always be part of the story. The small wins that follow become part of the story too. Together, they make a more truthful picture, a picture that includes collapse and also the quiet, ordinary, precious movements back toward balance. Thank you for listening to this very long story about small wins. If you are in the tender days after something went wrong, I hope you can find one small positive moment today. Name it. Write it if you can. Let it count. It is not too small. It is the beginning. And then look for the next one, and the next. In this gentle way, the heavy day loses some of its power to define you. You begin to remember that you are someone who can fail, and also someone who can notice warm water, who can charge a laptop early, who can speak for 7 minutes alone, who can receive a kind message, and who can keep going. That keeping going, supported by many small wins, is how repair happens. Not all at once, not with fireworks, with ordinary light, noticed and named, one quiet moment at a time.
The night I wrote in the dark. Slow English story. Journaling and writing feelings after the power cut. I want to tell you a very long and quiet story today. It is a story about writing. It is about a notebook and a pen and a dark room. It is about what happens when the power goes out and the only light left is the small screen of a phone, and even that light is fading. It is about the moment I finally put feelings onto paper after a day when everything went wrong. Many people think journaling is simple. You just write what happened. But on a hard night, writing can feel heavy and strange and necessary all at once. Let me tell you about that night and about the pages that followed, very slowly. You already know the day, the silent alarm, the cold water, the lost keys, the missed bus, the dead laptop, the blank mind, the quiet disappointment from my boss, the hard rain, and finally the dark apartment where the power had failed. I sat on the floor with wet clothes and a tired body. I had spoken to my mother. The conversation had given me a little lightness, but the feelings were still inside me, large and restless. They needed somewhere to go. The rooms were completely dark, except for the weak light of my phone. I could hear the rain still falling outside. The air was warm and still. My clothes stuck to my skin. I had taken them off and put on dry ones, but the tiredness remained. I sat with my back against the wall. For a long time I did nothing. I only breathed and felt the weight in my chest. The critical voice was still speaking. The comparison voice was still speaking. The shame was still present. The body was still carrying the stress of the day. Then I remembered the notebook. It was in my bag. A simple notebook I had bought weeks earlier and almost never used. I had told myself I would write in it every evening. I had not kept that promise. Most evenings I was too tired or too distracted. But tonight the distraction was gone. There was no internet, no television, no bright lights, only the dark and the rain and the feelings. I reached for the bag and found the notebook by touch. I also found a pen. I opened the notebook. The pages were blank and slightly cool under my fingers. I turned on the phone's flashlight at the lowest setting and placed it on the floor beside me. The light was small and yellowish. It made a circle on the page. Outside that circle, everything remained dark. I held the pen. My hand was still a little unsteady from the leftover stress of the day. For several minutes I did not write. I only looked at the blank page. The blankness felt similar to the blank mind I had experienced during the presentation. A part of me said, "You will not know what to write. You will make it worse. Leave it." Another part said, "The feelings are already here. They are heavy. Writing might give them a place to rest." I sat with both voices. Then I put the pen on the paper. The first words were simple. I wrote the date. Then I wrote, "Today was very hard." The letters looked uneven in the weak light. My handwriting was larger than usual because I could not see clearly. I continued, "Today woke up late. Water was cold. Could not find my keys. Missed the bus. The laptop battery was dead. My mind went blank. My boss was quiet and disappointed. It rained hard. The power is out. I am sitting on the floor in the dark." Writing the list of events felt strangely calming. Each sentence took a small piece of the chaos and placed it outside of me, on the page. The events were still true, but they were no longer only spinning inside my head. They had a physical location now. I could look at them. I paused and read what I had written. The list looked ordinary on paper. On paper, it was a sequence of problems. Inside my mind, it had felt like proof that I was failing at life. Then I began to write the feelings. This was harder. The events were clear. The feelings were mixed and less precise. I wrote, "I feel ashamed." The word ashamed looked heavy on the page. I continued, "I feel stupid. I feel small. I feel tired in my body and in my mind. My hands were shaking earlier. My heart was beating too fast. My mind went empty when I needed words. I keep thinking that other people would have handled this better." As I wrote the feelings, something unexpected happened. Tears came to my eyes. Not many, just enough to make the weak light blur for a moment. I had not cried during the day. I had been too busy moving from one problem to the next. Now, in the dark, with the pen moving, the feelings had space to rise. I did not try to stop the tears. I let them come while I continued writing. I wrote about the critical voice. There is a voice in my head that says I am careless and unprofessional and not good enough. The voice has been loud since this morning. It uses every mistake as evidence. It does not mention any of the days when things went well. It only collects the failures. Writing about the voice made it clearer. It became a character on the page instead of an invisible force that controlled me. I wrote about the comparison. I keep imagining other people who never lose keys and never freeze and never walk home wet and defeated. I do not know if those people exist, but my mind creates them and then measures me against them. The measurement always leaves me smaller. Seeing this sentence in my own handwriting helped me notice how unfair the comparison was.
I wrote about the body. My heart raced, my hands shook. Sweat appeared even though the morning was not hot. My stomach closed. My shoulders stayed high and tight. My mind went blank. These reactions felt like proof that I was weak, but maybe they were only proof that my body was trying to protect me in the only way it knows. This idea felt new as I wrote it. I had not thought it so clearly before. The phone light began to weaken. I knew the battery would not last much longer. I wrote faster. I called my mother. I told her everything. She listened. She said a hard day can be a teacher if I am willing to learn. After the call, I felt a little lighter. The problems did not disappear, but the isolation decreased. I paused and felt the truth of that sentence in my chest. I wrote one more paragraph before the light became too weak. I am writing this in the dark because the power is out. I do not know if writing will change anything, but the feelings needed a place to go. The page is holding them now. My hands are steadier than they were this afternoon. My breathing is a little slower. Maybe that is enough for tonight. The phone light died. The room became completely black. I closed the notebook by touch and placed it beside me. I sat in the darkness and listened to the rain. The feelings were still present, but they felt different. They had been named. They had been given shape on paper. Naming them had not erased them, yet it had reduced their chaotic power. They were no longer only a storm inside. They were also sentences that existed outside of me. I slept on the floor that night because I did not want to move. When I woke up, the power had returned. Morning light filled the room. The notebook was still beside me. I opened it and read the pages I had written in the dark. The handwriting was uneven and large. Some lines slanted downward, but the words were clear. Reading them in daylight was a different experience. The hard day looked more contained. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end on the page. I added a new entry that morning. I am reading what I wrote last night. The feelings are still here, but they are quieter. Writing them down gave them a boundary. Today I will try to notice small things that go okay. Then I closed the notebook and began the day. In the days that followed, I returned to the notebook every evening. The practice was imperfect. Some nights I wrote only 3 sentences. Some nights I wrote 2 pages. Some nights I resisted writing because I felt too tired or too empty. But I kept returning.
The notebook became a place where the inner world could be externalized. I want to describe what journaling did for me after that hard day, because the effects were gradual and important. First, writing slowed my thoughts. Inside the mind, thoughts move very quickly and often in circles. On paper, they have to line up one after another. This lining up creates order. Even when the content is painful, the act of placing it in sequence reduces the sense of chaos. Second, writing created distance. When a feeling lives only inside the body and mind, it feels identical to who we are. When the same feeling is written on a page, we can look at it. We can become the observer as well as the one who feels. This small distance is often the beginning of relief. Third, writing made the critical voice visible. Once the harsh sentences were on paper, I could see how absolute and repetitive they were. I could also write answers next to them. The page became a conversation instead of a monologue of attack. Fourth, writing collected evidence of small wins. In the evenings, I began to list moments that had gone okay. The warm shower, the charged laptop, the ordinary conversation, the deeper breath. Over days, these lists grew. They became proof that the hard day was not the only reality.
Fifth, writing helped the body. The stress of the hard day had lived in my chest, my shoulders, my hands, and my stomach. When I wrote about those physical sensations, I noticed them more clearly and then released them more easily. The pen moved, the breath deepened, the shoulders dropped a little. The body seemed to understand that the feelings had been received. I want to take you back into the dark room for a moment, because the sensory details of that first writing session still live in my memory. The floor was hard under my legs. The air smelled faintly of rain that had entered through a window I had opened earlier. The phone light created a small stage for the page and left the rest of the room in darkness. The pen made a soft scratching sound. That sound was the only movement in the quiet apartment. Each word felt deliberate because I could not write quickly in the weak light. The slowness itself became part of the healing. I could not rush past the feelings. I had to stay with them long enough to form the letters. Sometimes I wrote questions on the page. What am I most ashamed of? What do I need right now? What would I say to a friend who had this exact day? The questions opened doors that statements alone did not open. Answering them in writing brought insights that thinking alone had not produced. One night I wrote a letter to myself from the perspective of the kinder voice. You had a very hard day. Many things went wrong that were not fully in your control. Your body reacted the way bodies react under stress. Your mind went blank because it was overloaded. You are still worthy of care. You can begin again tomorrow with smaller steps. Reading that letter back to myself felt strange and comforting at the same time. Another night, I wrote only about the body. I described the racing heart, the sweating, the shaking hands, and the blank mind in careful detail. Then I wrote, "These reactions do not mean I am weak. They mean I am human, and my nervous system was activated. I can learn to meet them with more understanding." This entry helped me change my relationship with the physical stress responses. I also used the notebook to practice the soft voice. I would write the critical sentence on the left side of the page and a fairer sentence on the right side. Over time, the right side became easier to access, even when I was not writing. The notebook became a record of recovery. When I felt discouraged, I could turn back to earlier pages and see that I had already survived several difficult days and had collected small wins. The written evidence was more solid than memory alone, because memory often prefers to return to the painful moments. I want to speak about resistance because resistance is part of journaling after a hard day. Some evenings the notebook felt like another task. Some evenings I was afraid of what I might write. Some evenings I told myself that writing would change nothing. These resistances are normal. I learned to meet them with small agreements. I will write only 3 sentences, or I will write for only 4 minutes. Once I began, I often continued longer. Beginning was the hardest part. There were nights when I wrote nothing about the hard day and only described the present moment, the sound of the fan, the taste of tea, the feeling of clean sheets. These entries taught me that journaling does not always have to dig into pain. It can also anchor me in ordinary sensory reality. Both kinds of writing are useful. Over the following weeks, the notebook taught me patterns. I noticed that my critical voice became louder when I was tired or hungry. I noticed that comparison appeared most strongly when I was already feeling ashamed. I noticed that small wins clustered on days when I had slept better. The written record made these patterns visible. Once visible, they became easier to work with. I began to understand that journaling is not mainly about producing beautiful sentences. It is about relationship with my own inner world. The page becomes a place where feelings are received instead of rejected, where confusion is allowed to exist without immediate solving, where the different voices inside me can be heard and answered. The night of the power cut remains the most vivid writing session of my life. The darkness removed every distraction. The weak phone light forced me to go slowly. The rain provided a steady sound. The feelings were still raw. In that environment, the notebook became more than paper. It became a container strong enough to hold a difficult day.
If you are carrying heavy feelings and you have a notebook or even a piece of paper, you can try what I tried. You do not need perfect conditions. You do not need beautiful handwriting. You do not need to know what the ending will be. You can begin with the simplest sentence. Today was hard, or right now I feel. Then let the next sentence follow, and the next. If resistance appears, you can write about the resistance itself. I do not want to write. I am afraid of what I will find. Even that sentence begins the process. The page can hold resistance too. Writing feelings does not solve every problem. The dead laptop still needed charging. The presentation still needed a second chance. The relationship with my boss still needed time. But writing changed my position in relation to the problems. I was no longer only drowning inside them. I had a place to stand and look at them. That place made the next small steps possible. I still write. Some entries are long, some are very short, some are messy, some are clear. The notebook does not judge, it simply receives. In a world that often demands performance and polished surfaces, a place that receives the unfinished truth is precious. The power cut ended, the lights returned, life continued, but the pages written in the dark remained. They are still in the notebook.
The Substitute Teacher. One day that changed my path. Tonight's story begins on an ordinary Wednesday morning when a student named Lucas walks into his usual English classroom expecting the same familiar routine, only to find an unfamiliar face standing at the front of the room instead of his regular teacher. A quiet announcement explains that his teacher is unwell, and a substitute, a calm, unhurried man introducing himself simply as Mr. Halden, will be leading the class for the day. Lucas, like most of his classmates, feels a small flicker of relief at the sight of a substitute teacher, half expecting an easy, unstructured day with little real learning required. But Mr. Halden, rather than following the standard lesson plan left behind, begins the class differently, asking a simple, open question, not about grammar or vocabulary, but about what English actually means to each student personally, why they're learning it, what frustrates them most about it. The room falls into an unusual, thoughtful silence. Students, unaccustomed to being asked something so personal within an English lesson. Lucas, normally quiet and disengaged during these classes, finds himself unexpectedly drawn into the question, privately reflecting on his own long-standing frustration, the sense that no matter how much vocabulary he memorized, he never felt any closer to actually feeling confident using the language. When Mr. Halden gently calls on him, Lucas admits this frustration aloud, more honestly than he'd originally intended, expecting perhaps a standard, reassuring response. Instead, Mr. Halden nods thoughtfully, and rather than offering the usual well-worn encouragement, asks Lucas a different kind of question entirely. What he actually enjoys doing outside of school, what genuinely interests him beyond the classroom walls. Lucas mentions, somewhat hesitantly, his love of building model airplanes, an interest he rarely mentions at school, uncertain whether anyone would find it particularly interesting. Mr. Halden's face lights up with genuine curiosity, and rather than moving on quickly, he spends several minutes asking Lucas detailed questions about the hobby, gently steering the conversation, almost without Lucas noticing, entirely into English. For the first time in longer than Lucas can remember, he finds himself speaking English about something he genuinely cares about, the words arriving more naturally than they ever have during standard vocabulary drills or textbook exercises. Mr. Halden listens attentively, occasionally offering a helpful word Lucas is missing, never once making him feel embarrassed about the gaps in his vocabulary. Turning to the rest of the class, Mr. Halden begins asking similar questions of other students, drawing out their own personal interests, football, drawing, a particular video game, and gently guiding each conversation into English, demonstrating, through this simple, repeated exercise, how naturally language flows when it's tied directly to genuine personal passion, rather than arbitrary, disconnected topics. By the end of the class, the room feels noticeably different from its usual atmosphere, more energized, more genuinely engaged, students speaking English more freely and confidently than Lucas has ever witnessed during his regular lessons. Mr. Halden closes the class with a simple, memorable piece of advice, that fluency grows fastest, not from forcing yourself through material that bores you, but from finding ways to talk, read, and think in English about things you already love.
That evening, unable to stop thinking about the day's unusual lesson, Lucas pulls out one of his model airplane magazines, this time deliberately searching online for an English-language version of a similar publication, curious whether he might understand it more easily now that he's genuinely interested in the actual content rather than simply completing an assigned exercise.
To his surprise, he finds himself understanding significantly more than he expected, his genuine interest in the subject matter carrying him through unfamiliar vocabulary with far less frustration than his usual homework assignments ever produced. He spends nearly an hour absorbed in the material, barely noticing the time passing, his usual resistance to studying English entirely absent. Over the following weeks, Lucas begins deliberately seeking out English content connected to his hobby, video tutorials, online forums, detailed model building guides, treating this material not as language homework, but as genuine research into something he loves. His vocabulary begins expanding rapidly around this particular topic, building naturally through real engagement rather than forced memorization. When his regular teacher returns the following week, she notices, with visible surprise, a genuine shift in Lucas's participation and confidence, curious what had changed during her brief absence. Lucas explains, somewhat shyly, about the substitute's unusual lesson and about how differently he's been approaching his English study ever since, no longer forcing himself through disconnected exercises, but instead following his own genuine curiosity. Inspired by this shift, Lucas begins encouraging classmates to apply the same approach to their own particular interests, sharing Mr. Haldon's simple advice whenever he notices a friend struggling with similar frustration and disengagement. He becomes, in his own small way, an informal ambassador for this different, more personal approach to language learning. Months later, Lucas's English has improved dramatically, not just in his specific area of interest, but more broadly across his overall confidence and fluency, this initial spark having gradually expanded into genuine enthusiasm for the language as a whole. He often thinks back to that single, unexpected Wednesday, recognizing it clearly now as the true turning point in his entire relationship with English. Years later, preparing for university studies conducted partly in English, Lucas reflects on how much of his current confidence traces directly back to a single substitute teacher's unconventional lesson, a brief encounter that had lasted only a single class period, yet had reshaped his entire approach to learning something he'd once found so genuinely discouraging. And so tonight, let this quiet, hopeful story settle with you as you drift towards sleep. Somewhere, a single, unexpected lesson is quietly changing someone's entire path, proving that sometimes the smallest, most unplanned moments carry the greatest lasting impact. Whatever genuine passion already lives inside you, trust that it might become exactly the bridge you need toward deeper, more natural learning.
The overheard conversation, learning from strangers on a bench. Tonight's story begins on a quiet park bench beneath a wide leafy tree, where a young man named Julian sits alone during his lunch break, eating slowly, enjoying a rare pocket of calm in an otherwise busy day. Nearby, two elderly women settle onto a neighboring bench, deep in easy, unhurried conversation, their voices carrying gently across the quiet space between them. Julian doesn't mean to listen closely at first, but something about the natural, comfortable rhythm of their English gradually draws his attention away from his own thoughts. He notices, almost immediately, how different their conversation sounds from the careful textbook English he's used to studying, full of small pauses, half-finished sentences, gentle interruptions where one woman picks up exactly where the other trails off. This natural, imperfect flow feels to Julian both intimidating and fascinating, a glimpse into how English actually sounds when spoken freely between two people who know each other well. Over the following days, Julian finds himself returning to the same park bench during his lunch breaks, partly for the pleasant weather, but increasingly, he admits to himself, hoping to catch another naturally flowing English conversation nearby. He begins to think of these overheard exchanges as a strange, unplanned kind of listening practice, richer somehow than his usual structured podcast episodes. One particular afternoon, a different pair of strangers sits near him, two younger men discussing with obvious frustration some minor disagreement about weekend plans. Julian listens carefully, picking up small, casual phrases he'd never encountered in his formal lessons, easy, offhand ways of expressing mild annoyance, gentle compromise, quick agreement. These small, authentic expressions feel far removed from anything in his textbooks, yet clearly essential to real, everyday conversation. He begins keeping a small mental note of interesting phrases he overhears, sometimes jotting a few words down quickly on his phone once the strangers have moved along, careful never to make his listening too obvious or uncomfortable for those nearby. This quiet habit, entirely private and unannounced, becomes one of his favorite parts of his workday, transforming his ordinary lunch break into something quietly educational. One afternoon, an argument unfolds nearby between a parent and a frustrated teenager, their voices rising and falling with real, unguarded emotion. Julian notices, listening carefully, how their sentence structures shift under stress, shorter, quicker phrases, emphasis falling on different words than the calm, deliberate rhythm of ordinary conversation. This small window into emotionally charged English teaches him something his usual calm educational content rarely offers. As weeks pass, Julian begins noticing patterns across these many overheard conversations, common phrases repeated by entirely different speakers, similar rhythms of agreement and disagreement, familiar ways people transition between topics or gently interrupt one another. He starts to understand English not just as a set of grammar rules, but as a living, breathing rhythm shared broadly across countless individual conversations. One particular afternoon, two businessmen sit nearby, discussing a complicated work problem using vocabulary and phrasing considerably more advanced than his usual casual eavesdropping typically offers. Though he understands only about half of what they're discussing, Julian finds himself absorbed, straining to follow their more sophisticated language, recognizing this as a valuable, if challenging, stretch beyond his usual comfortable listening practice.
Encouraged by these small, unplanned lessons, Julian begins applying what he's absorbed to his own conversations. noticing himself using more natural transitional phrases, more comfortable pauses, a rhythm to his own English that feels increasingly less stiff and rehearsed than before. Colleagues at work occasionally comment on how much more relaxed and natural his English has begun to sound. One afternoon, sitting on his usual bench, Julian notices a young couple nearby speaking with the particular warmth and easy affection of people who know each other deeply, their conversation filled with small inside jokes and comfortable silences. He recognizes, listening quietly, an intimacy in their language use entirely different from formal or even casual acquaintance conversation, a register he'd never specifically studied before. As months pass, Julian's park bench listening becomes a genuinely valuable supplement to his more structured English study, offering him consistent exposure to authentic, unscripted conversation that no textbook or podcast could quite replicate. He begins to appreciate this small, quiet hobby as uniquely valuable precisely because of its complete authenticity. No one performing for an audience, simply people talking naturally among themselves. One particular afternoon, feeling bold, Julian finds himself gently drawn into conversation himself when an elderly man sitting nearby asks him a simple, friendly question about the weather. Their brief exchange flows more naturally than Julian expects, his months of careful, attentive listening seeming to have quietly prepared him for exactly this kind of easy, spontaneous interaction. Reflecting on this small success, Julian realizes that his quiet park bench practice had been building not just vocabulary, but genuine comfort with the unpredictable, unscripted nature of real conversation, teaching him to follow and respond naturally rather than relying on carefully rehearsed responses. He begins recommending this simple practice to friends struggling with English, encouraging them to spend time, whenever possible, simply sitting quietly in public spaces where English conversation naturally occurs, listening carefully without pressure to participate, absorbing the language's genuine rhythm the way he'd stumbled into doing himself, almost entirely by accident. Reflecting on his whole journey one quiet afternoon, sitting once again on his now familiar bench, Julian considers how much he owes to countless strangers who never knew they were teaching him anything at all, their ordinary, unguarded conversations offering him a richer, more authentic kind of English than he ever could have planned or purchased. And so, tonight, let this quiet story settle with you as you drift towards sleep. Somewhere on an ordinary park bench, two strangers are talking easily, their natural, unscripted conversation quietly teaching anyone patient enough to listen. Whatever quiet corners of your own daily life offer this kind of authentic, overheard language, trust that they may be teaching you more than you realize. The Broken Elevator, 6 Floors of Small Talk. Tonight's story begins on an ordinary Tuesday morning when a young employee named May arrives at her office building only to find a small apologetic sign taped to the elevator doors announcing that it's temporarily out of service. She sighs quietly, glancing toward the stairwell door, resigned to climbing 6 flights of stairs to reach her office. As she begins her slow ascent, she notices another employee, someone from a different department she's never actually spoken to, starting up the same stairs just a few steps ahead of her. For the first flight, they climb in comfortable silence,
both apparently accepting this small inconvenience without complaint. But somewhere around the second-floor landing, the man ahead of her, whose name she doesn't yet know, glances back and offers a small, friendly comment about the inconvenient timing of the elevator's breakdown. May, though nervous about her English in this unplanned, unexpected interaction, manages a polite, agreeing response. Encouraged by her reply, he continues the conversation as they climb together, mentioning that he works on the 4th floor in the accounting department, asking casually which floor she's headed toward and what she does. May explains, a little hesitantly at first, about her own role in the marketing department, surprised by how naturally the conversation continues, despite her initial nervousness about speaking so casually in English. By the 3rd floor landing, their conversation has settled into an easy, comfortable rhythm, the physical activity of climbing stairs together somehow removing much of the usual social pressure May typically feels during more formal workplace interactions. There's something about moving forward together, quite literally, that makes the conversation feel less like a performance and more like simple, natural companionship. He mentions, between floors, a minor frustration about a recent work project, and May, finding herself genuinely interested, asks a follow-up question, surprising herself with how naturally the question forms, without her usual careful, anxious preparation before speaking. He answers readily, clearly pleased by her genuine curiosity, their conversation deepening slightly as they continued their unplanned climb. Reaching the 4th floor, where his own office is located, he pauses at the door, and for a brief moment, May wonders whether their conversation will simply end here, cut short by the practical reality of their different destinations. Instead, he mentions, almost as an afterthought, that he actually needs to visit someone on the 6th floor as well, and asks whether she'd mind if he continued the rest of the way with her. Genuinely pleased by this small, unplanned extension of their conversation, May agrees readily, and they continue up the remaining 2 flights together, their conversation drifting now into slightly more personal territory. Favorite lunch spots near the office, weekend plans, a shared easy laugh about the inconvenience of broken elevators in general. By the time they reach the 6th floor, May realizes with quiet surprise that she's been speaking English continuously and comfortably for nearly 10 minutes without once pausing anxiously to search desperately for a word, without the usual careful rehearsal she typically performs before any planned conversation. This unplanned, physically active exchange had somehow bypassed her usual nervousness entirely.
Before parting ways at the top of the stairwell, he mentions warmly that he's enjoyed their conversation, suggesting they should grab coffee together sometime now that they've properly met. May agrees enthusiastically, genuinely pleased by this small, unexpected new connection, born entirely from an inconvenient, broken elevator neither of them had any control over. Walking to her own desk afterward, May reflects on how differently this conversation had unfolded compared to her usual, more anxious approach to workplace small talk. She realizes that the physical activity of climbing stairs together, combined with the complete lack of any planned agenda, had somehow freed her from her usual self-consciousness about speaking English casually and spontaneously. In the days that follow, May finds herself thinking often about this small accidental encounter, gradually applying its lesson to other situations throughout her week, allowing herself to speak more freely during unplanned, casual moments rather than reserving her English exclusively for carefully prepared formal interactions. The following week, true to his word, her new colleague invites her for coffee, and their friendship continues to develop steadily, their conversations growing increasingly comfortable and natural with each subsequent meeting. May notices that her overall confidence in casual workplace conversation has grown considerably since that first unplanned stairwell encounter. One afternoon, the elevator breaks down again, and this time, rather than feeling frustrated by the inconvenience, May finds herself almost welcoming the opportunity, deliberately choosing to take the stairs even though a colleague mentions the elevator has actually already been repaired. She climbs alone this time, but reflects fondly on how much that first accidental encounter had taught her about the value of unplanned, spontaneous conversation. She begins making a small, deliberate effort to create similar opportunities for herself, choosing the stairs occasionally even when the elevator works perfectly fine, hoping for another chance at the same kind of easy, natural conversation that had once felt so unexpectedly comfortable during that first unplanned climb. Reflecting on the whole experience one evening, May considers how meaningfully a single small inconvenience, an ordinary broken elevator, nothing more, had ended up teaching her something valuable about her own capability with English, proving to her more convincingly than any planned lesson ever could that natural conversation flows most easily exactly when we stop overthinking it. And so, tonight, let this quiet story settle with you as you drift toward sleep. Somewhere an ordinary inconvenience is quietly creating an unexpected opportunity for genuine connection and confidence. Whatever small, unplanned moments arrive in your own life, trust that they might carry more value than any carefully prepared conversation ever could.
The Foreign Exchange Student, a year that changed two families. Tonight's story begins at a small airport arrivals gate, where the Rahim family stands nervously, holding a handwritten sign, waiting to greet a 17-year-old exchange student named Inez, arriving from abroad to live with them for the coming school year. None of the Rahim family speaks English particularly fluently, and Inez, though she's studied English for years, still feels nervous about actually living inside a language she's mostly only practiced within a classroom. That first evening, dinner around the family table feels stiff and careful, everyone speaking slowly, searching for simple words, long pauses filling the spaces between sentences. The youngest child, an 8-year-old named Sami, watches Inez with wide, curious eyes, occasionally attempting a shy, halting English phrase he'd learned at school, delighted whenever she understands and responds warmly. Over the following days, the household begins settling into a new, unfamiliar rhythm, English gradually becoming a more constant presence throughout the home, rather than something confined only to formal lessons. Inez, patient and encouraging, begins gently correcting small mistakes during ordinary conversation, never making anyone feel embarrassed, simply offering the right word naturally when someone reaches for it and comes up short. Sami, in particular, takes to this new arrangement with obvious enthusiasm, following Inez around the house eagerly, practicing small English phrases whenever he gets the chance, delighted by her genuine patience and warmth. Within just a few weeks, his vocabulary expands noticeably, driven far more by this daily natural exposure than by his formal occasional school lessons. The parents, Farah and Bilal, find their own English improving more slowly, but just as steadily, gradually growing comfortable enough to hold simple everyday conversations with Inez about her day, about news from her home country, about small, ordinary household matters. Their conversations, though occasionally halting, grow warmer and more natural with each passing week. One particular evening, struggling to explain a local family tradition to Inez, Farah finds herself reaching for increasingly specific English vocabulary, genuinely motivated by her desire to properly share something meaningful with their guest. This kind of motivated, personal communication, she notices, pushes her English forward far more effectively than any of her earlier, more passive attempts at studying. As months pass, Inez becomes deeply woven into the family's daily rhythm, no longer simply a guest, but someone whose presence has genuinely reshaped how the entire household communicates. English phrases begin slipping naturally into their ordinary conversations, even when Inez isn't directly present, small words and expressions she'd introduced now becoming a comfortable part of the family's everyday vocabulary. One evening, helping Sami with his English homework, Bilal finds himself explaining a grammar concept with surprising confidence, drawing on months of steady, informal practice, absorbed simply through daily conversation with Inez. He realizes, with quiet satisfaction, how naturally his own understanding has deepened alongside his son's more formal, structured lessons. One particular afternoon, meeting a new client at work, Grace finds their initial small talk about the day's unusually pleasant weather naturally extending into a longer, more substantial business conversation. The initial comfortable topic serving as an easy, low-pressure bridge into more important discussion. She recognizes in this moment exactly how valuable her patient practice with seemingly trivial small talk has actually become. Reflecting on her progress, Grace realizes that whether small talk, often dismissed as meaningless or overly simple, had actually served as an ideal foundation for her broader English confidence, precisely because it offered low stakes, universal relevance, and endless opportunity for natural, gradual expansion into increasingly detailed conversation. She begins sharing this particular strategy with friends struggling with English conversation anxiety, encouraging them to identify their own comfortable, low-pressure topics and deliberately expand their vocabulary within those specific areas before worrying about broader, more intimidating conversational range. One friend, skeptical at first about how much difference such a seemingly trivial topic could truly make, tries Grace's approach for several months before admitting, genuinely surprised, that her own conversational confidence has grown considerably, precisely following this same gradual pattern of expansion from simple, comfortable small talk into broader, more substantial conversation.
Nearly a year after that first nervous exchange at the bus stop, Grace finds herself comfortably navigating a wide range of everyday conversations, her confidence no longer limited to any particular topic, built gradually and patiently from that single, small, unremarkable comment about cold morning weather so many months earlier. Reflecting on her whole journey one evening, Grace considers how meaningful it feels that her English confidence had grown not from any single dramatic breakthrough, but from patiently, deliberately expanding something as ordinary and universally accessible as weather small talk, proving that even the smallest, most overlooked conversational topics can become genuine foundations for real, lasting growth. And so, tonight, let this quiet, everyday story settle with you as you drift toward sleep. Somewhere, a simple comment about the weather is quietly opening into something larger, proving that even the smallest, most ordinary conversations can become genuine doorways toward real confidence and connection. Whatever small, comfortable topic already exists in your own conversations, trust that it might quietly become the foundation for so much more.
Tonight's story begins in the quiet, sunlit common room of a small retirement home where a young university student named Amara arrives for her first volunteer shift, nervous both about the unfamiliar setting and about her own uncertain English, which she's still working hard to improve. She'd signed up mostly to fulfill a community service requirement, expecting simply to help serve tea and assist with small daily tasks, not anticipating how deeply this particular volunteer work would end up shaping her language journey. Her first assignment involves sitting with an elderly resident named Mr. Abernathy, a retired schoolteacher who, according to the staff, enjoys nothing more than sharing stories from his long, eventful life with anyone willing to listen. Amara approaches nervously, uncertain whether her English will be strong enough to properly follow his stories, let alone respond thoughtfully. Mr. Abernathy, sensing her nervousness immediately, simply smiles warmly and begins speaking slowly, deliberately, asking gentle questions about her own life first, easing her carefully into conversation before beginning his own stories. His patient, unhurried pace, developed clearly over decades of teaching young students, puts Amara instantly at ease, allowing her to follow along far more comfortably than she'd anticipated. That first afternoon, he shares a simple story about his early teaching career, using clear, straightforward language perfectly suited to Amara's current level of English. She finds herself genuinely absorbed in the story itself, momentarily forgetting her usual self-consciousness about her language abilities, focused instead simply on following the genuinely interesting narrative unfolding before her. Over the following weeks, Amara returns regularly, gradually building a warm, comfortable friendship with Mr. Abernathy, who continues sharing increasingly detailed stories from his life, his childhood, his early career, small personal memories he clearly treasures sharing with an attentive, genuinely interested listener. Amara notices her vocabulary expanding steadily, absorbed naturally through these engaging personal narratives rather than through any formal structured lesson. One particular afternoon, Mr. Abernathy introduces her to another resident, Mrs. Whitcomb, a former nurse with her own rich collection of stories from decades of medical work.
Amara finds herself, over subsequent visits, splitting her time between these two patient storytellers, each offering distinctly different vocabulary and perspective, broadening her overall exposure to varied, natural English expression. As months pass, Amara begins noticing something remarkable. These elderly residents, speaking slowly and clearly from decades of lived experience, offer a particular kind of English entirely different from the fast, casual speech of her university classmates. Their careful, deliberate storytelling style, filled with rich descriptive detail and thoughtful pauses, teaches her a more measured, articulate way of both listening and eventually speaking herself. One afternoon, Mrs. Whitcomb shares a particularly moving story about a difficult period during her nursing career, and Amara finds herself genuinely emotional. Her understanding of the story deepened considerably by her growing connection to this woman, sharing something so personal and meaningful. This emotional engagement, she notices, helps the accompanying vocabulary settle into her memory far more permanently than any neutral, disconnected classroom material ever managed. Encouraged by these deepening friendships, Amara begins asking more detailed follow-up questions during each visit, pushing herself to construct increasingly complex sentences in order to properly engage with the rich, detailed stories being shared with her. Both Mr. Abernathy and Mrs. Whitcomb, delighted by her genuine curiosity, patiently help her find the right words whenever she stumbles.
As Amara's fluency grows, Amara begins bringing a small notebook to her visits, jotting down particularly interesting phrases or vocabulary she encounters during their conversations, building a personal collection of rich, expressive language drawn directly from these generous, patient storytellers. She notices this vocabulary carries a depth and specificity often missing from her more standard academic study materials. One particular afternoon, several residents gathered together for a small group storytelling session, and Amara finds herself following a lively, multi-person conversation considerably more challenging than her usual one-on-one visits. Though occasionally lost amid the overlapping voices, she manages to follow the general thread of conversation, proud of how far her listening comprehension had grown since her nervous first afternoon. Nearly a year into her volunteer work, Amara's English has grown noticeably more sophisticated, her vocabulary richer and more nuanced, her overall confidence considerably stronger than when she'd first nervously approached Mr. Abernathy's chair. Staff members at the retirement home comment occasionally on how naturally she now converses with residents, no longer needing the careful, deliberate pace she once required. One particularly meaningful afternoon, Mr. Abernathy, now considerably weaker than during their earlier visits, thanks Amara sincerely for her patient, genuine friendship over the past year, mentioning how much he's enjoyed watching her English grow alongside their many conversations. Amara, deeply moved, realizes how much this friendship has meant to her as well, extending far beyond simple language practice into something genuinely valuable and personal. Reflecting on her whole experience, Amara understands that these elderly residents had taught her something no classroom ever could, not just vocabulary and grammar, but a deeper appreciation for patient, attentive listening, for the rich stories held within ordinary lives, and for the genuine connection that becomes possible when language learning is built upon real relationship rather than isolated study. She continues her volunteer work well beyond her original required commitment, no longer motivated by any academic requirement, but by genuine attachment to the friendships she's built and the rich, meaningful stories she continues to encounter with each visit, her English growing quietly and steadily alongside these deepening bonds. And so, tonight, let this warm, gentle story settle with you as you drift toward sleep. Somewhere in a quiet, sunlit room, an elderly voice is sharing a lifetime of stories with someone patient enough to listen closely. Whatever generation or story crosses your own path, trust that genuine, patient listening often teaches far more than any lesson ever could.
The Broken English, Perfect Heart, a love story, sleep learning. Tonight's story begins at a small community language exchange event held in the back room of a quiet cafe where people gather weekly to practice English together over coffee and simple conversation. A young man named Jay, originally from a country where English isn't widely spoken, sits nervously at a corner table, uncertain whether he'll manage more than a few halting sentences all evening. Across the room, a young woman named Valentina, similarly unsure of her own English abilities, glances around the unfamiliar space, equally hesitant. When the event's organizer pairs them together for a simple conversation exercise, both Jay and Valentina feel an immediate flicker of relief, recognizing something familiar in each other's visible nervousness. Their first exchange is halting, filled with small pauses and careful, deliberate sentences, but there's an unexpected ease in speaking with someone who understands exactly how difficult and how vulnerable this kind of imperfect communication can feel. Their conversation that first evening moves slowly, built from simple questions and patient, careful answers. Yet somehow, despite the limited vocabulary and occasional grammatical stumbles, they find themselves genuinely enjoying each other's company. When the event ends, they exchange contact information, agreeing, a little shyly, to attend the same event again the following week. Over the following weeks, their weekly meetings become something both of them look forward to increasingly, each conversation growing slightly more comfortable, slightly more personal than the last. Jay finds himself thinking about Valentina between their meetings, practicing new phrases specifically so he might use them during their next conversation, hoping to share small pieces of his life more clearly with her. One particular evening, struggling to explain something meaningful about his family back home, Jay pauses, frustrated by his own limited vocabulary. Rather than growing impatient, Valentina simply waits, offering gentle encouragement, and when he finally manages to convey his meaning, imperfectly but genuinely, she reaches across the table and tells him in her own careful English that she understood exactly what he meant. This small, tender moment marks a quiet shift in their relationship, both of them recognizing something deeper developing between them beyond simple language practice. They begin meeting outside the formal language exchange events as well, walking together through a nearby park, their conversations growing longer and more comfortable with each passing week. One evening, walking slowly beneath a canopy of streetlights, Valentina admits, with careful honesty, how nervous she'd initially been about developing feelings for someone she couldn't yet fully communicate with in either of their native languages. Jay, understanding completely, admits the same fear, and together they decide that their imperfect English, rather than being a barrier, has actually taught them to listen more carefully, more patiently than either of them had with anyone else before. As their relationship deepens, they develop small private habits together, patiently helping each other with new vocabulary during quiet evenings, occasionally laughing warmly at their own charming mistakes, gradually building a shared, unique way of communicating that belongs entirely to the two of them. Their English, though still imperfect, carries a genuine warmth neither of them had expected to find in a language neither considers fully their own.
One particular evening, attempting to express something deeply meaningful, Jay finds himself reaching, uncharacteristically, beyond his careful, rehearsed phrases, speaking instead directly from his heart, despite his uncertain grammar. Valentina, moved deeply by this genuine vulnerability, responds in kind, both of them understanding, in that quiet moment, that real connection had grown far beyond the limits of their shared, imperfect vocabulary. As months pass, their English continues improving steadily, each of them motivated deeply by their genuine desire to communicate more clearly with someone they've grown to care for so deeply. Their conversations grow increasingly natural and confident, though they both admit fondly that they'll always treasure those early, halting, imperfect exchanges that first brought them together. One evening, introducing Valentina to a small group of his own friends, Jay watches proudly as she navigates the unfamiliar social setting with growing confidence, her English considerably stronger now than during their very first nervous meeting. His friends, charmed by her warmth, despite her occasional grammatical imperfections, welcome her easily into their circle. Reflecting together one quiet evening, both admit that their relationship has taught them something valuable beyond simple language improvement, that genuine connection rarely depends on perfect communication, but rather on patience, genuine effort, and the willingness to keep trying, imperfectly but sincerely, to understand another person fully. As their first year together approaches, Jay plans something meaningful, carefully preparing a heartfelt message in English, wanting to properly express his feelings despite his continued uncertainty with the language. When he finally shares it with Valentina, his words imperfect but genuinely deeply felt, she finds herself moved to tears, recognizing in his careful, imperfect sentences more sincerity than perfect grammar ever could have conveyed. Reflecting on their whole journey together, both Jay and Valentina understand clearly now that their shared imperfect English, rather than limiting their relationship, had actually deepened it in unexpected ways, teaching them both a rare kind of patience and genuine attentiveness that speakers fluent from birth rarely have reason to develop with each other. They continue attending the original language exchange event occasionally, now as a couple, sometimes helping newer, nervous participants the same way they'd once been gently guided by more experienced members years earlier, remembering fondly their own halting first conversation that had, against all their early uncertainty, quietly grown into something lasting and genuinely meaningful. And so tonight, let this warm, tender story settle with you as you drift towards sleep. Somewhere, two hearts are finding each other through careful, imperfect words, discovering that genuine connection rarely requires perfect language, only patience, honesty, and the willingness to keep trying, imperfectly but sincerely, to understand another person fully. The job I almost quit. Finding words for frustration. Tonight's story begins in a small break room where a young man named Dario sits alone during his lunch hour, staring at his half-eaten sandwich, his mind consumed with a decision he's been circling for weeks, whether to quit his job entirely. The frustration has been building steadily for months, a growing sense that his concerns are never properly heard, though if he's honest with himself, he's never quite managed to explain those concerns clearly either, his limited English making it difficult to express anything beyond the simplest, most surface-level complaints. That particular afternoon, following yet another frustrating meeting where he'd struggled to articulate a genuine problem with his workload, Dario decides he's finally had enough, drafting a brief, angry resignation letter on his phone during his lunch break, ready to submit it the moment he returns to his desk. Before sending it, though, something makes him pause, a nagging sense that he's giving up not on the job itself, but on his own ability to properly communicate what's actually troubling him. Rather than submitting the resignation immediately, Dario decides on a different approach, staying up late that same evening, attempting to write out as clearly and honestly as possible exactly what has been frustrating him about his work. Writing slowly, consulting a dictionary frequently, he begins to realize something important. His frustration isn't really about the job itself, but about specific, nameable problems he'd simply never had the vocabulary to properly express to his supervisors. Over several evenings, he continues this careful writing exercise, working through draft after draft, gradually finding increasingly precise English words to describe his actual concerns, feeling overwhelmed by unclear expectations, feeling excluded from important decisions, needing clearer communication about project priorities. Each new, more accurate word feels like a small key unlocking a frustration he'd carried silently for months. One particular evening, finally satisfied with a clear, honest draft describing his concerns, Dario reads it aloud to himself several times, testing the phrasing, adjusting sentences that feel too harsh or too vague. He realizes, working through this process, that his earlier frustration hadn't simply been about workplace problems, but about his own inability to advocate clearly for himself in a language still relatively new to him. Building his courage over the following days, Dario requests a private meeting with his supervisor, bringing his carefully prepared notes along for support. Though nervous, he manages, for the first time, to explain his concerns clearly and specifically, using the precise vocabulary he'd worked so hard to develop, rather than the vague, frustrated complaints he'd struggled through in previous conversations. To his genuine surprise, his supervisor listens attentively, clearly grateful for such clear, specific feedback, admitting she'd sensed his frustration for some time, but hadn't fully understood its actual source. Together, they discuss practical solutions, addressing several of his specific concerns directly, in a conversation entirely different from his previous, more frustrated and vague attempts at communication.
Walking out of that meeting, Dario feels a profound sense of relief, not because every problem has been immediately solved, but because he'd finally managed to communicate clearly enough to be genuinely understood. He realizes, reflecting on the conversation afterwards, that his earlier impulse to quit had been born largely from this communication gap, rather than from the job itself being fundamentally wrong for him. In the weeks that follow, Dario continues applying this same careful, deliberate approach to workplace communication, taking time before difficult conversations to write out his thoughts clearly first, building his professional English vocabulary specifically around the kinds of concerns and feedback he needs to express regularly at work.
One particular afternoon, noticing a colleague struggling with a similar frustration, clearly considering resignation over what seems to be a communication issue rather than a fundamental job problem, Dario shares his own recent experience, encouraging her to try the same careful, written approach before making any final decisions. His colleague, skeptical at first, eventually tries writing out her own concerns clearly, discovering, much as Dario had, that her vague frustration actually contained several specific, addressable issues she'd simply never had the precise vocabulary to properly communicate. Their shared experience becomes a small, informal resource within their team, several colleagues gradually adopting this same reflective, written approach before difficult workplace conversations. As months pass, Dario's overall confidence in professional English conversation grows considerably, no longer limited to vague, frustrated complaints, but capable now of clear, specific, constructive communication with his supervisors and colleagues. He notices his workplace relationships improving steadily alongside this growing communication skill. Reflecting one evening on how close he'd come to quitting entirely, Dario feels genuine gratitude for that small, deliberate pause before submitting his hastily drafted resignation letter. He understands now, clearly, that his real problem hadn't been his job or his employer, but simply his own underdeveloped ability to express complex, nuanced frustration clearly, in a language still relatively new to him. He begins keeping a small ongoing document specifically for professional vocabulary, adding new words and phrases whenever he encounters particularly useful expressions for workplace communication, treating this vocabulary building as an ongoing practical investment in both his English fluency and his overall career satisfaction. Nearly a year after that difficult afternoon in the break room, Dario reflects on how meaningfully his relationship with both his job and his English had transformed, not through any dramatic external change, but through his own patient, deliberate effort to find increasingly precise words for increasingly complex feelings. And so, tonight, let this quiet, thoughtful story settle with you as you drift toward sleep. Somewhere, someone is sitting with genuine frustration, uncertain whether the real problem lies in their circumstances or simply in their struggle to name what's actually troubling them. Whatever frustration you're carrying tonight, trust that finding the right words, patiently and honestly, often reveals paths forward you couldn't see before.
The puzzle on the table. Learning patience through play. Tonight's story begins in a quiet living room where a retired woman named Margaret sits at a small table by the window, a half-finished jigsaw puzzle spread out before her, its thousand scattered pieces slowly coming together into the image of a distant mountain landscape. Beside her, a small speaker plays a gentle English podcast, the calm, unhurried voice filling the room as her fingers move slowly, patiently, sorting through pieces by color and shape. This particular evening ritual began almost by accident several months earlier, when Margaret had simply wanted some quiet background sound while working on her new puzzle hobby, choosing an English podcast mostly out of idle curiosity, rather than any serious intention to study the language. She hadn't expected this simple pairing to become one of the most valuable parts of her ongoing effort to finally learn English properly, something she'd always meant to do, but never quite found the right approach for. That first evening, she understood only fragments of the podcast, her attention split between the unfamiliar words and the immediate, satisfying task of matching puzzle pieces together. Yet something about this particular combination felt right. The repetitive, calming nature of puzzle solving, somehow creating exactly the relaxed mental space needed for gentle, low-pressure listening practice. Over the following weeks, this became a steady, comfortable evening ritual, puzzle pieces and podcast episodes progressing together, side by side, neither activity demanding her full, exclusive attention, yet both somehow benefiting from this shared, unhurried pace. She noticed, within the first month, that she retained more from these relaxed listening sessions than from her previous, more effortful attempts at formal English study. One particular evening, working through a specially difficult section of sky-colored puzzle pieces, all nearly identical shades of blue, Margaret found her focus narrowing, becoming almost meditative, and in this quiet, concentrated state, the podcast's English words seemed to settle into her memory with unusual ease, absorbed almost passively, while her conscious attention remained elsewhere. As months passed, she began choosing her puzzles and podcasts more deliberately, pairing longer, more complex puzzles with longer, more detailed podcast episodes, intuiting correctly that both activities seemed to benefit from matching lengths of sustained, patient attention. She noticed her English comprehension improving steadily alongside her growing collection of completed puzzle images now framed and displayed throughout her home. One evening, completing a particularly challenging 1,000-piece puzzle depicting a bustling European market scene, Margaret realized, placing the final piece carefully into position, that she'd also just finished an entire podcast series about traveling through similar markets abroad, understanding nearly everything discussed without needing to pause or rewind a single time. This small, quiet triumph, arriving alongside her completed puzzle, felt like proof of real, measurable progress. She began keeping a small notebook nearby, occasionally pausing her puzzle work to jot down an unfamiliar word or phrase from the podcast, though she noticed these interruptions happening less frequently as her comprehension steadily improved. Most evenings now, she simply let the words wash over her, trusting the gentle, repetitive nature of her listening practice to do its quiet work without constant conscious effort. As her collection of completed puzzles grew, lining her hallway walls with framed, colorful images, Margaret began to think of each one as a small physical marker of her English journey as well.
remembering which particular podcast episodes had accompanied each puzzle's slow, patient completion. Her home became, in its own quiet way, a visual timeline of both hobbies developing together. One particular evening, a visiting grandchild noticed her unusual routine, curious why she always listened to English while working on her puzzles rather than watching television or listening to music instead. Margaret explained, with quiet pride, how this simple pairing had taught her more English than years of half-hearted attempts with formal lessons and apps ever had. Her grandchild, intrigued, tried the same approach herself during a visit, working slowly through a smaller puzzle while listening to a simple podcast alongside her grandmother. Though her own English was already considerably stronger, she found herself surprised by how pleasant and calming the combination felt, understanding immediately why Margaret had grown so fond of this particular evening ritual. As Margaret's fluency continued deepening, she began choosing increasingly complex podcasts, sometimes on topics she'd never previously considered particularly interesting, finding that her patient, puzzle-solving state of mind made even unfamiliar subjects feel approachable and manageable. Her overall curiosity about the English-speaking world, she noticed, had grown alongside her language skills themselves. One evening, working through a puzzle depicting a peaceful countryside scene, Margaret realized she'd been silently narrating her puzzle-solving process in English without consciously deciding to do so. Small phrases like, "this piece goes here," or "almost finished," arriving naturally in the new language rather than her own native tongue. This small, spontaneous shift felt like quiet, undeniable proof of how deeply the language had settled into her everyday thinking. Reflecting on her journey one particularly satisfying evening, completing perhaps her 50th puzzle since beginning this quiet habit, Margaret considered how unexpected and gentle this particular path toward English fluency had turned out to be, built entirely from patient, unhurried repetition rather than any forced, stressful study session. She began recommending this simple pairing to friends struggling with more traditional, pressured language learning methods, suggesting they find their own calm, repetitive activity, knitting, gardening, cooking, to pair with gentle podcast listening, trusting that genuine progress often grows best in exactly this kind of relaxed, patient, low-pressure environment. And so, tonight, let this quiet, patient story settle with you as you drift toward sleep. Somewhere, scattered puzzle pieces are slowly coming together, accompanied by a gentle voice speaking nearby, both activities quietly teaching patience, focus, and steady, unhurried growth. Whatever calm, repetitive activity already lives in your own evenings, trust that it might quietly become a doorway to learning too.
The handwriting on the wall, graffiti that taught me a phrase. Tonight's story begins on an ordinary walk home when a young man named Tobias takes an unfamiliar shortcut through a narrow alley he's never explored before, hoping to avoid the usual crowded main street. Halfway through the alley, his eyes catch a large piece of street art spray-painted across a weathered brick wall, bold English letters spelling out a short, simple phrase alongside a colorful, abstract design.
He pauses, reading the words slowly, turning their meaning over carefully in his mind. The phrase itself is simple, only a handful of words, something about persistence, about continuing forward despite difficulty. Tobias understands the individual words easily enough, but something about their particular combination, their rhythm, catches his attention in a way ordinary textbook sentences rarely manage. He stands there a long moment, phone forgotten in his pocket, simply reading and rereading the painted words. That evening, unable to stop thinking about the phrase, Tobias searches for it online, curious whether it's a quote from someone specific or simply the artist's own original words. He finds several similar variations used by different people over the years, each carrying slightly different emotional weight depending on context, and this small research deepens his understanding and appreciation of the phrase considerably. Over the following days, Tobias finds himself returning to that same alley more often than his usual route would require, drawn back specifically to reread the graffiti, each visit revealing some small new appreciation for its particular wording, its rhythm, the way its simple vocabulary carries such genuine emotional weight despite its brevity. He begins writing the phrase down in his own notebook, alongside a few personal reflections about why it resonates with him so strongly, connecting it loosely to a difficult period he'd been navigating recently in his own life. This personal connection, he notices, makes the English vocabulary contained within the phrase settle into his memory far more permanently than any random vocabulary list ever managed. One particular afternoon, sharing his discovery with a close friend, Tobias finds himself explaining the phrase's meaning in his own words, translating and interpreting it thoughtfully, rather than simply repeating it verbatim. This exercise of genuine explanation, rather than passive memorization, pushes his own understanding and expression considerably further than his usual, more academic approach to new vocabulary. Encouraged by this experience, Tobias begins actively seeking out other pieces of street art and public writing throughout his city, treating each new discovery as a small, unplanned English lesson hidden in plain sight throughout his everyday surroundings. He starts a small photo collection on his phone, documenting each new phrase he encounters during his regular walks. One particular piece, discovered near a small park he frequents, uses wordplay and a clever pun he initially completely misses, only understanding its double meaning after a friend patiently explains the joke to him. This particular lesson in English humor, delivered through genuine, unplanned discovery rather than formal instruction, teaches him something about the language's playful flexibility that no textbook exercise had previously managed.
As his collection grows, Tobias begins noticing patterns in the kinds of phrases favored by street artists throughout his city. Short, punchy, often deeply emotional or philosophical, clearly crafted for maximum impact within limited space. He finds himself absorbing not just vocabulary, but an entire style of concise, powerful English expression, entirely different from his usual, more formal academic study. One evening, feeling genuinely inspired, Tobias attempts writing his own short phrase in English.
something personal and meaningful he might consider sharing eventually, though he keeps this early attempt private for now, simply testing his own growing ability to craft concise, emotionally resonant English sentences of his own. Months into this unusual hobby, Tobias returns to the original alley where his journey had begun, finding the graffiti slightly faded now from weather and time, yet still legible, still carrying the same quiet power it had held during his very first encounter. He photographs it carefully, wanting to preserve this particular starting point of his ongoing collection. As his English continues improving, Tobias notices himself thinking more often in this same concise, impactful style, occasionally crafting short, memorable phrases in his own head to capture particular thoughts or feelings, a habit he traces directly back to his growing appreciation for the compressed, powerful language he'd first discovered scattered across his city's walls. One afternoon, a tourist stops him near a particularly striking piece of street art, asking, in halting English of their own, what the painted phrase means. Tobias finds himself explaining thoughtfully, drawing on his own months of careful reflection about similar phrases, genuinely pleased to share this small, unexpected passion with someone else equally curious about the language. Reflecting on his whole journey, Tobias considers how unlikely and unplanned this particular path toward improved English had turned out to be, built entirely from unexpected discovery rather than any structured lesson. His city's walls becoming quite literally an ongoing, ever-changing classroom, hidden in plain sight throughout his daily life. He begins encouraging friends learning English to pay closer attention to public writing throughout their own cities, street art, protest signs, even simple advertisements, suggesting that these small, unplanned encounters with authentic, emotionally resonant language often teach more than carefully curated textbook examples ever could. And so tonight, let this quiet, thoughtful story settle with you as you drift towards sleep. Somewhere, painted quietly across an ordinary wall, a few simple words are waiting patiently to be noticed, ready to teach far more than their brief length might suggest. Whatever unexpected corners of your own daily life might hold a similar quiet lesson, trust that meaningful discovery often arrives exactly when we least expect it.